Take two.
What's going on, everybody? This is podcast number 13. It is our conspiracy theories podcast. As always, did you have a good week, David?
I had a great week. Well, just kind of. It's great now that I'm here.
Are you dressed all spiffy?
No, not really.
Is this your new attire?
Yeah,
Your new work attire?
This is what I have to wear now.
Is a requirement?
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I feel your pain.
I haven't tested it the other way yet. I worked in an office before I did this. I mean, I used to have to dress like this every day, so.
You should definitely just wear your Stone Cold Steve Austin shirt on Monday. See how it goes over.
Cut off sleeves.
Cut off sleeves, couple cans of beer.
No,
Blue
not the
jean
cut off
shorts.
sleeves. That's too much.
My blue jean
No.
shorts and some boots.
They gotta be uber tight though.
Yeah, and I gotta have knee pads.
And then tall black boots.
in the wrist wrappings. Don't forget the wrist wrappings.
Hey,
That's what really brings.
it is, but you don't have to really shave your head. Just go get one of those swimming caps
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then do your skin color.
They have ones that'll match your skin color. I just get that.
Yeah, just get that. You don't have to shave your hair.
Hey, if you're not even fully committed, I don't even want to hear about this. Throw shave that head.
I mean, I do like that idea better, but there's always an alternative.
So, how was your week, big guy?
Yeah, about usual.
Yeah.
Bunch of crap at work.
I'm off next week, so my week was really
Rub it in.
painstaking.
Rub it
I
in.
had to make it all the way through the week without trying not to die. So, I'm happy to be here now, though. Except, we're probably going to talk for a couple of hours, and then I got to get up and go deer hunt in the morning. So, are you going?
Not in the morning. I gotta take the animals to the vet.
What kind of slacker are you?
I have to work.
You always work Saturdays, though.
I know. Tell me about it.
I worked last Saturday after we filmed the podcast. That was super fun. So.
Did you get locked in?
Yeah. It was legit, and all I had left over was like I had some stuff from the Sakura Express or whatever, and I had like a half portion of it, and so like I just took that with me because I was too lazy to pack my lunch.
Sakura down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was too lazy to pack my lunch, so I took my leftovers for that, and I just like demolished them. I was like, man, I should have packed more.
That's a decent establishment.
That's pretty decent.
Yeah.
Decent.
For the money. So
They can make their meat portions a little bigger, but it's
lot
okay.
of was it zucchini in that? Or was it cucumbers?
I always get
Zucchini.
it without zucchini.
Yeah, they put a lot in there.
My kid loves it though. Kenna will fight you over some of that zucchini.
It's alright, it's probably the only vegetables I eat. It's because it's snuck in there.
You're the type of one that has to hide your corn in your mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
You put enough yum sauce on it to make it alright.
Yum
So,
sauce makes it better.
to kind of jump into our conspiracy theories without further ado, the first thing that we have on the docket is aliens. I feel like it's probably the most widespread and compelling argument of a conspiracy theory. If you want to call it that, I assume that there's lots of conspiracy theories within the conspiracy theory of aliens.
There
itself.
are. I think nowadays, though, you got a little bit more widespread, like JFK, 9/11, stuff like that.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Not,
Dude,
so to me, it's more along the lines of aliens. Do you believe or not?
I'm
I'm asking each of the questions, Dave.
Yeah.
Do you believe?
an eternal skeptic. I question everything, but aliens are one thing I do believe in.
Kellen?
I mean, I think that you would be pretty naive to think that as vast and expansive as our galaxy is, and then all of the subsequent galaxies, that there would be anything less than some other form of life, whether that's a life that is smart enough to build spaceships, or if it's a life that's just existing on the planet, like an animal would be on planet Earth. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I feel like that you'd be pretty naive to think that all of the galaxies out there, infinite as far as we know, that there wouldn't be something else
Good point.
out there.
Well, I think too. When you think about Roswell, after the crash and stuff, kind of when we saw the technology boom. I don't want to say that those two things are related, but I mean they very well could be. I think the biggest explanation for the tech boom though is the Cold War, government spending, and competition between government spending. But
So you don't believe the reverse engineering of the alien technology?
it definitely could be something, but I don't go as far as to believe in the ancient alien stuff.
Yeah, I'm there with
Like
you.
some of the
but-
stuff you hear on History Channel is a little too far, but
True.
Well-
With the reverse engineering, though, I believe wholeheartedly in that. I mean, before that, we didn't have any type of microprocessors. Think about computers back in the day; they
Yeah.
were bigger. You couldn't fit half of one in this room. And then, it was just a couple decades later they have it that small.
Well, even fiber optic cables and technologies like that.
non-existent before
Yeah.
that.
yeah, the biggest jump in mankind history has happened within the last 100 years, and it's,
And you're talking about billions of years before that. And, you kind of rained on my parade a little bit of some of those points that I had as far as that goes. But I don't feel like you can exactly rule out ancient civilizations, and that's something that I want to do. My kind of idea behind this conspiracy theory podcast was doing one every 13 episodes. And so basically we do one now, and then episode 26 we do another one. And ancient civilizations is definitely one that I want to do in the future. And, some civilizations were so much more technologically advanced than the others. It's hard to say whether, they came from another world or whatever it may be. Perhaps that they were just more advanced, and that's all there was to it. Because, science has shown that there was other forms of humans that didn't make it.
that also has to do with agriculture and farming too. Like, there's a correlation between when those ancient civilizations, how far they progressed based on their, how they developed agricultural practices.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Graham Hancock?
No.
That's definitely something we'll talk about in future ones. And basically his theory is that perhaps Atlantis was real, and whenever that happened and Atlantis went away, that the people that were basically without a home spread out, and that's the reason that there was a technological boom then with agriculture, with the pyramids of Egypt, the pyramids in South America. It's all around the same time, which is somewhere around 10 to 12,000 years ago. So, that's something that I definitely want to talk about in the future. And I feel like that there's some pretty compelling evidence for that. Whether those were just, regular humans or not, I don't know. But evidence like the pyramids that started out perfect, and yet the farther that they got along, the worse that the architecture was. And so his theory was that there was some type of ancient civilization that was around Atlantis or whatever it may be. They moved into this area. They taught these people how to do this stuff, but then they passed away. And when they passed away, it was just the normal Egyptians trying to do it. And that's the reason the architecture got worse. Because it doesn't really make sense to have something that you're building and get worse at it. You would think that you would actually get better at it. So I think that there's a lot to that. It's definitely something that I want to touch on in the future conspiracy theory podcast. But whether they were aliens or not, I don't know. And to be honest with you, I haven't done enough research to know. But I would think if there was actual evidence of aliens back then, it wouldn't just be architecturally. It would be, technology like we had in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And, it does correlate with a lot of these sightings and crashes like Area 51, Roswell, and things like that. There was a big technology boom, but maybe David's right. And I think that it actually goes back before the Cold War.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to World War II, because there was such a race for these atomic weapons. And then basically when we kicked the Germans' asses, we took all of their scientists and we brought them over here and made them part of the Manhattan Project. And their knowledge combined with our scientists' knowledge obviously boosted us in the future. So whether that was the factor that kind of brought us to where we are now, or if these crashes like at Roswell and the other one that you mentioned, which I was not familiar with, you called it the British Roswell.
I've not done a whole lot of research on it, but apparently Roswell had something, or in Britain there's something similar to Roswell in the early to mid 80s, where there was supposedly a crashed ship that landed that they covered up. And honestly, I need to do more research on it before I can talk even more on it. It was just a quick point in one of the things I was looking at. But there's been sightings all over the world for how many years of potential abductions, which a lot of those I really don't believe.
Right.
But the crashes, the sightings, for instance, in the early 90s, what was it, the triangles over Phoenix?
Yeah.
How many times in a short period of time just 3 triangle lights hovering and not moving in the skies of Phoenix?
I think a lot of that can be contributed to the advances that we made with our Air Force and things like that. I think a lot of times those areas that these things are sited are near military bases, and obviously we have to test them out. And I don't really think that they care if citizens see it or not.
Yeah.
Especially not at the nighttime, because they're not going to be able to tell what it is.
Very true.
And Area 51's been doing. I mean, they all the way back to testing like stealth bombers and things like that. So this has been around for a long time. They denied the existence of Area 51 until like the 90s, I think. And the only reason that they admitted that Area 51 existed is because they wanted to buy more land. And they couldn't buy more land under government subsidies if they didn't admit that it existed. So without that, you still may not have a true admission of Area 51 being there. But you kind of go back in time to Area 51, and they plane these people in from Las Vegas, and one of the planes actually crashed. I don't know the year, but there's kind of a little mini cover up with that, not admitting that it was going to Area 51, but obviously it was.
Well, and to play off that too, I was going to think early mid 90s is when there's a lot more advanced technologies going out in satellites, and surveying the land of the world. Sooner or later, it was going to come out.
I think that they could hide that, though. I mean, think of all the missile sites and everything else that have been in existence. I mean, yes, with Cuba and the JFK kind of scenario that we're talking about with the Bay of Pigs later, they were able to use satellites and things like that to determine that they were building a nuclear missile site in Cuba, which, that's, that was in the 60s. So, obviously, that this technology goes back to then, but in the 90s, the difference was that the technology was available for average citizens through, and I'm not sure when Google Earth came around, to be honest with you, but I'm not even sure if using Google Earth, if Area 51 isn't so hidden. I mean, they would probably be able to tell there's a base there, but from my understanding, most of it's underground, so they're not going to be able to see anything.
No, most of the facilities are underground, but they have how many hangars they have, the airstrips. There's a lot of exterior buildings that they do have. So sooner or later, they would have came out that there was a base there that nobody known about, and how did they get so advanced in that particular base in the building so quickly without people knowing about it? I think they used the buying of more land more along the lines of, okay, well, how can we break this to the public the softest?
Yeah. Well, my biggest concern with aliens is that it's so vast and it's so broad, and there's so many storylines within it. Like, you would think that there would be more evidence than what we have, especially nowadays where everybody has an HD camera in their pocket that they can pull it out and be able to film it or whatever it may be. And if there was this big advanced civilization out there, why would they hide from us? You know what I'm saying? Like, what would be the point of them hiding from us?
Maybe they don't think we're ready for it.
I mean, why would they care, though? That's my biggest question. Like, if they were so much further advanced than us that they could bend, the time-space continuum to get here and mess with us, why would they care if we knew or not? I mean, unless we're just a giant scientific experiment by them, why would they care?
That could be true too, but they also could not want to, not have mass panic and hysteria to where when they do finally feel like we're ready, that look how many movies are out there. I hate to bring pop culture in this, but look how many movies are out there with, from War of the Worlds to Independence Day to all that, to where as soon as something shows up, our first instinct, is shoot first, ask questions later.
But I don't think there's ever going to be a scenario where that wouldn't happen.
I agree, but
I mean, if people show up from another world, you're going to freak out, no matter if it's 2017 or it's 3017. I mean, people showing up out of the skies out of nowhere is going to freak everybody out. And I guess I just can't I can't figure out why they would care about what we thought, because just think if humans had the abilities to go to space and to hit light speed or whatever it may be to get to other places, and we went to other places and we found life that wasn't where we were yet. I mean, if you look at where we came over and we settled in America, even the things that we did that we weren't really trying to hurt them, like, you know, passing out blankets and we give them smallpox and kill off a vast majority of their population. I mean, why would we care? You know what I'm saying? If we had that technology, we would go over there, we would do what we thought was helping, or maybe we wouldn't. Maybe we'd just try to take over because it's kind of human nature. And, you know.
It could just be spectators. It could just be, you know, a lot easier, like, you know, explanation. It could just be, you know, like I said, just it's part of their science, you know, to come study people.
And
but,
again,
I mean, it could have just been a one-time thing where they came. I mean, I'm not sure if they have like a hand in the government. I'll go as far as to believe that stuff.
You're not ready to put
That's
that
where the
tinfoil hat
conspiracy
on?
theory lies, though. It's like the government knows about it. Why wouldn't the government say anything? But like that, people do freak out though about stuff. They freak out about the smallest thing.
It's human nature to fear with the unknown.
Yeah.
But again, I hate to bring up pop culture, but all right, look at, like, going off what you said, why would we care? Okay, look at popular things like Star Trek. Okay, there's something in that whole series called the Prime Directive, to where if they come up along a civilization that isn't advanced, they don't put their hand in, they're not seen, just so they don't incite riot. What if they have something similar to that?
I mean, I think that goes back to my scientific experiment comment, and I feel like that's the only plausible explanation of why they would not want to kind of come in and mess things up. But, you know, kind of going back to Roswell, supposedly, you know, the craft that crashed had technologies that were advanced to us, like carbon fiber cables, things like, or fiber optic cables, things like that advanced our society. But the explanation that those people gave, those crafts weren't like super advanced. I mean, so it doesn't seem like they're that much more advanced than us. I mean, it just seems like a little bit here and a little bit there.
Yeah, at the same time, that they're capable of traveling how far? Because, I mean, just to go from, say, here to the moon takes, what, 9-10 months at our current rate of speed that we're able to travel? So they had to come from at least there, if not farther, more likely farther. So they have the technology to travel vast distances at a very small amount of time in comparison. Obviously, they were way farther ahead of us than we could ever hope to be.
Could have been like Alien or Prometheus, of those movies where they freeze themselves in time till they get here.
I mean, it could be. I mean, there's a million different things it could be. I just like the fact that we're doing this whole thing conspiracies, and you're, you know, the skeptic devil's advocate, and yet you're more on board with it than he is.
Well, something that I saw recently that was very interesting. Tom DeLonge, the dude from Blink-182, he was on the Rogan podcast, and he swears that he has got in with the right levels of government that has given him access to technologies that they've taken from alien crafts. And he basically says that the thing that enables them to hit that light speed to be able to travel is the metals that they use within the ships. And he said that the metals are already becoming prominent within our society. We just don't know it yet. And he said within the next couple of years, his group of people are going to be releasing these type of metals to, I guess, to the public to prove that these crafts are real.
And again, it goes along with the microprocessors and the fiber optics. They were slowly integrated into our everyday society to where now it's everyday stuff. I mean, you have a microprocessor there, and the computing capability of that wouldn't fit in this house back when Roswell happened.
That's true, but as far as you would think that would just be the natural progression of things. So as far as tangible evidence, do you think that there's anything out there? Like, do you buy into the Roswell crash?
Yes.
Why? I mean,
I have to believe that we are not alone. I'm going to go X-Files on you. Do you believe? I do.
So, but even stating that and believing that we are not alone, why does Roswell stand out as being true and real? Because
the way that the government reacted to it is far different from any other type of thing that had ever happened at that time. To come out and publicly say that, oh no, it was just a failed weather balloon, which at the time it wasn't uncommon, no. But it's the fact that, they showed up, they took over this guy's farm, they kicked him off of his farm for a period of time, if I'm not mistaken. so they could take that and move it to what is now known as Area 51.
Well, it wasn't actually a weather balloon. That might have been the official story, but what it was is it was some type of system that was supposed to be able to detect Russians launching missiles. So it was a balloon type thing, but it actually wasn't.
The Cold War propaganda.
Yeah, but at the same time, you've got to understand that if we had this technology, we wouldn't want citizens or the Russians to know that we had it and we were implementing it to try to prevent them from launching missiles on us. So, to play devil's advocate, if that's the case and that's really what it was, which is what the story is now, then why wouldn't we rush out there and clear the people off and try to hide this technology from anyone and everyone?
And that could potentially be absolutely true. I mean, it very well could be. But, okay, you go back to even the hieroglyphs in the pyramids. They have found hieroglyphs in the pyramids that aren't like any other hieroglyphs ever found in Egypt.
Yeah.
They depict, what we would consider an alien.
Yeah. And actually,
somebody in a suit.
Tom DeLonge talked about Greek writing and how Greek writing started, and supposedly Greek writing is something that was brought on by aliens, and Greek writing was supposedly on pieces of the crash at Roswell. That's the story that he gave.
Again, that could be absolutely true. But look at the gods of all the major ancient civilizations. You got all these different religions that have, or all these different civilizations that have multiple gods in their religion. You go from the Egyptians to the Romans to the Greeks, and the Romans and the Greeks are the same people, just different names.
Right.
To the Vikings, they all have all these different gods that can control different things.
Right.
They all have these extraordinary abilities and powers. That they could just be it's just lore that was come up with. But you look at some of the writings of back then, people really didn't have that kind of an imagination.
Well, but at the same time, and we're going to kind of go back to the ancient civilizations. Let's say that Graham Hancock's theory about Atlantis is true, and these people showed up on different shorelines as they were forced out of their home. And, whether it was the flood, whether it was a tsunami, whether it was the island falling in the freaking ocean because of an earthquake.
Or the island being a crash in a spaceship that they finally fixed and taken off.
We're going to have to get the aluminum hats back up for that. But let's say that happened and these people dispersed and they went to different areas and they started spreading what they knew. If you were, the Egyptians, and these people showed up on the shoreline and they started teaching you things that you thought were, almost superhuman superpowers, then you may write them in as gods as well, when they're actually just human beings from a different area with different knowledges. You see what I'm saying?
And again, it could very well be true. But then you got the Greeks and the Romans.
I'd say that the people that were here when America was founded probably thought we were superhuman with our fire sticks and all this crazy technology we had.
Absolutely.
So,
okay, but you got the Greeks, the Romans, and the Egyptians, all those civilizations right around the same time period. Okay, then you got the Vikings, which didn't come to main power and prominence till well after.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, there's similarities between all their gods.
Right.
There are, and yet it could just be a random traveler that gave it to them. Very well could be. But they have, not trying to go too far into the ancient civilizations, but the Egyptians, they have a lot of their gods. They had specialized vehicles that they came to visit them on.
Right.
Some of the Greeks and Roman gods had the same
even
thing.
back to the Bible talks about a spinning wheel in the sky in Isaiah. I mean, so there's always things that can't be explained throughout history that that people have written about.
I mean, the Bible talks about giants with David and Goliath.
Yeah, those things could have been meteor showers or anything like that.
No, it very well could be. But my own personal opinions, I can't believe that we are it in the mass existence of what is the known universe. Out of all, like you said, all those infinite combinations of planets and suns, we're it.
I don't think that you can dismiss what David's saying, but at the same time, you can't dismiss the story that you're giving either, because there's no way to go back in time and prove it right or wrong.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not until they decipher that from the alien technology.
Yeah.
That's another theory you could explain by aliens. They could be time travelers from the future. just spectators, like I was saying,
Could be.
on vacation, go and take a look back.
Let's go see what it was like in the 90s.
Yeah.
I saved that topic for last because something that honestly scares the crap out of me is the interdimensional travels that, like the Hadron Collider and things like that. We're already experimenting with that. And, anybody that knows my grandpa, I mean, you guys both have been around him a lot, that he's as straight of a shooter as you possibly could get. And he doesn't go out on a limb with these kind of hokey theories. But, he talks about the Hadron Collider. He talked to me about it before I even knew anything about it. And he said that, they're going to mess around and they're going to open a dimension and they're not going to want to do that. I mean, because obviously dimensions in our theories exist in infinite forms. So, we could be having this conversation a million times over. You could be David's lover and another one.
And we could all have 3 eyes, green skin, and horns.
Yeah. So, if you're going off the theories of dimensions, then that's how it could be. And I've always heard that, the easiest way to travel would be interdimensionally. And if there's no time as it exists, and if you travel that way, you could literally travel to any point in time in history. And so... And that's another technology that's kind of just came out of nowhere. And, we're talking about the Hadron Collider and things like that. So
the splitting of atoms.
Yeah, things like Einstein. And relativity in time and,
So we're talking about perhaps opening a Stranger Things portal underneath, Germany or whatever the hell.
Be upside down. Let's do it.
Yeah. So
actually, if that portal was real, it would be in, was it the Hole to Hell in Russia?
I don't know. I mean,
is that that movie, the Tom Hanks movie, The Angels and Demons? Is that the thing that they're talking about?
I haven't seen that one. I saw.
I can't remember.
I don't remember. Is that the third one?
The second
No,
one.
it's the second one.
Okay.
Is that what it is now?
It's something along those lines. They took an extremely volatile substance or something along that.
And the Vatican's trying to stop it, or the Vatican's doing it? I can't.
No, they're trying to destroy the Vatican, and but they're going through different symbols, and that's a whole other topic for the video.
But what do you guys think about that interdimensional travel? Like, is that another possibility? Like, we always look up to the sky, but wouldn't it be possible for them to open some type of wormhole?
Honestly, I think everybody has experienced some type of interdimensional travel in their own lives. I mean, look at Deja Vu.
Life's going deep.
Look at Deja Vu.
Well, in the movie,
it's a glitch in the Matrix. You see something that you recognize. Okay, this has already happened. How can you not say that might not be interdimensional travel or even time travel of some sort?
I mean, I've heard Joe Rogan talk about taking DMT, and he believes that that's kind of a way to another dimension. When you're actually dreaming, your body releases something that's similar to DMT. And so a lot of these stories where people are being say that they're being abducted by aliens, the theory is a lot of them are asleep and their body's producing DMT, and it creates something so real that when they wake up they think they were actually taken, and which is a plausible explanation of it.
Yeah, because I don't see the point of them coming down and abducting a primitive species as we are.
But we're a scientific experiment too. I mean, Independence Day, they were trying to figure out how to kill us, bro. So I mean, you got to think if they are staying away, as David said, and they don't want to come and let their presence be known, why would they not experiment with us to know what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are?
I mean, they could be, but look at most of the people that are abducted. They have a long history of psychological...
Yeah.
And I'm playing devil's advocate on this one. I don't believe in the abductions.
Right.
Most of the people that have been abducted supposedly have a long history of psychological disorders and issues. So it could be them just having a psychological breakdown or an episode or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. Or it could just be a cry for help. Hey, I want attention.
One of my favorite abduction stories is the Fire in the Sky story about the guy who was working and went missing. And
I've never heard that one.
Oh, you've never heard? It's like one of the most famous abduction stories. This guy, he was a logger. He was out with his crew. They'd seen like a bright light, and I guess he just vanished. And these guys were investigated by police, and they thought they'd killed him. And the guy was gone for like 2 weeks and just showed back up and claimed to be abducted. It's a pretty good story.
Or what if all these abduction claims are also Interdimensional travel.
I mean, it's impossible to say. There's no way to prove it right or wrong. Like you said,
where they're being taken by creatures from another dimension, so they're technically being abducted, and they're aliens to us because it's something we don't understand. So obviously they're an alien, but it could be something along that line.
I would worry about a person if they didn't look at the sky and wonder what else was out there. But I think that interdimensional travel is probably the scariest portion of it. And to kind of conclude all this alien talk, do you think that the government would in fact produce this mass cover-up to protect us or whatever it may be? Do you think that they would try to capture all the evidence like at Roswell or whatever it may be to try to learn more about it, to try to reverse engineer, as you all said? Or do you think that they would be honest to the human race?
I mean, it could be all the above. They could be covering up not to protect us, but to protect themselves.
Why would they protect themselves?
Well, the biggest role of the government is to keep peace. Anything they see a threat to the peace, I'm sure that they would, anything that's going to hurt the economy, hurt people the way they live, hurt religion potentially. They don't want to Why would you even go out and announce it?
But what would be more hurtful? To cover it up or to completely deny its existence and then find out that they've been lying to us all along?
Well, they can never find out. The government could just say, because they're the authority. They're the authority.
How many times have they lied to us in the past?
I mean, yeah, that's true. But
the government has absolutely no problem lying to other people. And that's not just our government. This is government throughout time.
I feel like that they would have to be worried that some other race would just show up at some point in time and throw everything to mass hysteria. You would think that they would try to make preparation for it.
Maybe they are.
Plausible deniability.
And maybe all those satellites in space that have all the missiles are actually pointed towards space and not towards here.
Yeah, true. So like you said, maybe they are actually using all this information they've collected and the technology they've collected to further protect us, which is absolutely possible. But then at the same time, not everybody in the government knows about it. Only certain people are going to be known about it. It's going to be passed down from position, from successor to successor to successor to successor, just as a form of plausible deniability.
Well, not only that, but the government's so compartmentalized that I really don't feel like the left hand knows what the right hand's doing.
That's true too.
No, they don't.
I mean, I don't feel like that there's probably enough communication. I feel like they all have their own agendas and their own ways of doing things, and it doesn't necessarily connect to the other, branches of government. So,
the biggest argument I have for aliens being spectators is, I listen to, I do watch a lot of alien stuff. There's a big correlation between, times when nuclear tensions are high and alien sightings. So, they go together. So perhaps maybe they're trying to warn us too. But that's a whole other thing. That's an explanation I've always heard.
The spectator, the sign,
or maybe they're stopping.
That's what that dude in Canada says. The dude that was in the Canadian government, I can't remember his last name, but he's like a staunch advocate of aliens' existence, and he says that humans are too destructive as a race for them to come here and give us more technologies and stuff like that, because
that is absolutely 100% true.
We don't know what we would do with it.
Yeah, but the nuclear weapons too, they've helped prevent wars too. Like, we would never go to war with Russia now because of mutual destruction. War, like in World War II with the carnage and just going out in the field and fighting someone, that's obsolete. That'll never happen again like that.
Maybe not. I mean, the fear of complete annihilation could make it to where we still do ground offensives.
And again, I'm going to bring another pop culture reference in, and it's somebody that was comparing, humanity as a whole to something that's a virus.
Yeah. We are a virus.
We are. I mean, look at animals. They have their own form of population control, yes, between predators and prey and everything else. But they don't go and they don't unless it's a virus or something that doesn't actually belong there. Like what was it? The snakehead fish in Florida. They don't actually belong in that environment, so they destroyed that environment. Humanity as a whole throughout history has never settled in one place. They've always wanted more, wanted bigger, wanted better. and it's depleted our natural resources to a bare minimum.
Yeah.
It's destroyed the planet.
There's a huge flip side to that, though. People are living better now than they ever had.
Compared to what?
There's actual compared to all of life before.
Well, it's just that
you only lived to be like 30 before you either got killed in war or disease.
Very true.
There was no such thing.
Okay, so you live longer.
What
what's the correlation between living longer and living better?
Well,
there really isn't.
I got all the information in the world right here.
And that makes your life better. Are you actually?
Yeah, information.
Okay. If you would have been born, even 100 years ago to now, are you so certain that you'd be happier in your life now than what it was 100 years ago?
100%, because I'm not working 18-hour days. I'm not working from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep on a farm that may not produce enough food for my family to eat that year. I can go out to Kroger down the road and buy something, and still at the other side learn how to, go my own way in case that doesn't.
I completely agree with David. We're living the best time ever for human beings.
I'm not arguing that this is the best time for humans. I'm arguing that who is actually to say that we are actually living better as a whole, mind, body, soul, whatever you want to call it, now than what they did even 100 years ago.
I mean, I think...
Who's to say that they weren't actually happier with how their lives went than we are? Look at stress levels between now and even 50 years ago. Stress levels are at all-time high. Suicide rates, depression, anxiety.
A lot of that probably has to do with the fact of the way we do live. I feel like people manage stress and tragedy and everything else so much better because they're so used to it.
And people are more open about it now. People would never talk about those things.
But the fact that we don't have to worry about our children dying from the common cold or flu, the fact that I can sit there on my ass and watch Netflix all day long, I mean, I don't even think it's comparable.
Yes, I love TV, the internet, my phone. Can I live without my phone? Yeah. Do I want to? Absolutely not. I think that putting the internet in a handheld device was one of the worst things humanity ever did as a whole.
No, Facebook is one of the worst things. The internet's not so bad. It's Facebook and it's social media and it's everything else to give people power that don't have any power.
True. But as a whole, making this right here the most popular thing in the world, or the most popular and powerful thing in the world, it was the worst thing humanity ever did.
Yeah, but
instant gratification has ruined.
Mike's going to start talking about Skynet in a second.
It's already happening. Yeah, it's already happening.
They created that robot with Facebook, and the robot became self-aware and started thinking for itself and made a language between it and another robot. They're like, we need to just pull the plug on this thing.
Hey, look at that! Look at the artificial intelligent robot that now has citizenship in Saudi Arabia that has come out in public and said, "I want to have a baby."
I think that you're confusing I think you're confusing everything. I feel like life is more fleeting now because we don't have the struggles and the tragedies that kind of form us as human beings. To make us better, we can sit behind the phone. We can be a keyboard warrior and all these things. Yes, that's what you're saying, and it's true. But at the same time, it's the world. Despite what everybody thinks, the world's the safest it's ever been. There's less war. There's less disease.
Oh, I'm not arguing that.
So what you're saying is two different things. Now,
yes, I'm absolutely playing both sides of this fence.
But no. But what I'm saying is, happiness. It's judged in a different way than it was 100 years ago. You're happy if you live to be 50 years old and your kids weren't killed by bears or mountain lions or disease or Indians or whatever it may be. I mean, there's two different sides of this. I mean, what you're saying I understand completely. Like, I feel like what you're saying is we're not as fulfilled as they were 100 years ago.
We're not as fulfilled. Instant gratification. I need it now. I need it yesterday. This, that, and the other.
Yeah.
No,
I understand that part of it, but at the same time,
it has ruined communication.
If you think that, for instance, my great grandmother, she was born 100 years ago, and she had a family before the husband that she ultimately had my grandfather with. And the reason that she no longer had them is because they all died. The tuberculosis thing came through. It killed, it just wiped a ton of people out. And so if you think that she wouldn't trade her life of the tragedy and having to go and be quarantined and all these crazy things and all the years of checking up and making sure that it didn't come back and and all the craziness that she had to go through. If you don't think that if you asked her, would you trade your life, to 2017 to where you don't have to worry about your kids and everything being wiped off the map and being stuck in a sanatorium with nobody that knew what to do, you're crazy.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that by no means. By no means am I saying that. I'm not saying that there are absolute benefits for living in this day and age, because there are.
Yeah.
If I'm saying there's no benefits in this day and age, you can shoot me in the head right now because I'm a liar. Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that as a whole, humanity is not as happy or as fulfilled, as you said, as it was even 100 years ago. Cell phones have ruined communication. Show me a school that teaches cursive writing anymore.
Yeah,
That teaches writing in general.
I think they
Where
brought it back.
Bring it back.
Yeah.
Where they don't do everything on a tablet.
But cursive writing too is obsolete.
I
get arguments with people about this all the time. When people go, "My kids don't even learn cursive no more. Get off my lawn!" And I'm like, they don't need to learn how to write in cursive.
No, and they don't. But it was just the point. Look at how they changed math from 2 + 2 is 4 to whatever this Common Core crap is now, where 2 + 2 is actually 37.
Way.
We are getting way off topic, but still.
So let's bring
People are a
it.
little more educated now than they were then.
Let's reel it back in, because I feel like that this could be a conversation that literally goes on all day. So
We've had these conversations before.
what you said earlier kind of struck me and ties into our next topic. You said that the Bible talks about giants, and the Bible talks about giants in several different forms, with Goliath, who is an ancestor of the angels that fell from heaven, which were supposedly giants on
and
earth.
the Nephilim that were, the children of the angels that were supposedly 9 foot tall.
So our next topic is giants in North America. The reason that this came about was because of a Graham Hancock, Joe Rogan podcast. They talked about a conspiracy where the Smithsonian took bones that they found in Indian burial grounds that were giant bones, and they disposed of them to hide the existence of giants in North America. So, this was a topic that I threw out that I thought was interesting. I've seen evidence both ways for giants' existence made up. There's the case of Texas, where they have the oil fields and where it has basically sustained footprints of not only dinosaurs but supposedly really large humans in the time of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And so, this is a topic that I kind of gave to you because I was so immersed in JFK. I feel like anybody could talk about aliens because aliens are so subjective that
anything you say, they even has the word aliens in it, it can be thrown out as a conspiracy.
So these next two topics are a little bit more difficult. I'm as deep as you can get in the JFK conspiracy. So I kind of left the giants up to you a little bit more,
and I did as much research as I could that my schedule would allow, which honestly, unfortunately, wasn't a whole lot. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot. But what I found was, they have found burial grounds, like you said, in India burial grounds all over the country. And one of the largest burial sites with giant-sized bones of people ranging from, 7.5 to 9 feet tall.
I saw 12.
Well, I'm just talking, the largest number. It was actually somewhere here in Kentucky, where they found it was over 200 skeletons. They found the same type burial grounds in West Virginia and Oklahoma and as far as California. I also found a speech from Lincoln when he went and visited Niagara Falls, where he talked about the beauty and the splendor of Niagara Falls and how the people who came before us got to live there and bask in its beauty. Through and he the words he said was, "The eyes of these giants." And he wasn't. The way that it was worded, it didn't seem like he was talking about about Niagara Falls. He was talking about the people that came before us. So and you look at, like you said, the Bible. You have David versus Goliath. You look back in Roman and Greek mythology. You have giants themselves, and you have cyclops, which are kin to giants. Excuse me. And you have evidence of this all over the world.
Right.
I think the tallest,
it's kind of like aliens. It's been
I think the tallest ones ever found were, like you said, 12, 13 feet tall, and it was a human skeleton.
Right. And Indian legend had a lot about it in North America. They contribute some of the skeletons that they found to gigantism, like Andre the Giant or whatever it may be, which I'm sure that some of that can be.
Who's not to say that that's a recessive gene becoming dominant
That's a really good point.
In vitro.
Right.
When you're developing in your mother's womb, who's to say that's not a recessive gene that we all have? I mean, look at the people in this room. David, how tall are you?
5'9".
Kellen?
6'3".
I'm 6'7". I'm well above average, and I'm by no means, the tallest I've ever seen. I have a friend in Lexington who's 7'2". I have a friend in Cleveland who's 7'3". And I hate them with everything I own for the fact that they're taller than me.
I'm the biggest.
I have severe Napoleon complex when I meet somebody that's taller than me. I don't know why, I just do. It's not often I meet somebody that's taller than me.
How do you think I feel? If I was 6'7", I'd probably still be playing basketball.
I remember that I went to go see a drive-by church in Lexington. I was like, Mark, what's up? And then my friend was like, man, he's tall. And you're like, no, that guy's tall. That's what you're talking
about my buddy Mongo.
You're like, stand up. And the guy stood up.
And he dwarfed me. I nicknamed him Mongo from what is that? Blazing Saddles. And
I was on my best behavior the rest of the night.
You see a guy bigger than me. This ain't good for nobody.
Every time you got out of there, he just went like this because he's going to choke slam you.
Cane music play.
Right.
So, I mean, I understand what you're saying. It's one of those things that I don't know that we'll ever prove. Like, there's no way that we can possibly prove that in the 1890s the Smithsonian found bones and destroyed them. I know that, it's kind of been disproven on the internet, but I mean, anybody can say anything on the internet.
No.
So there's no way for us to prove it right or wrong. But, I think one of the factors that everybody kind of forgets and dismisses is the fact that our atmosphere has changed so drastically over the history of our planet. Our atmosphere was more conducive to larger beings, such as the dinosaurs. So, we keep saying humans are X amount of years old, and then they'll find a site that's older than that they carbon date. So, to say that there's no way that we knew that humans didn't exist back then, and if they did exist back then, the atmosphere is different. We could grow to be a lot larger. There's metals that they can't reproduce because our atmosphere has changed so drastically in the point in time from when they were made. So,
or look at people even nowadays. For instance, Yao Ming,
right?
Okay, who's so much far taller than the average Asian male.
Yeah.
Again, I go back to who's to say that is not a recessive gene that we just can't read. With all of our vast technology and science, we just can't read to realize that this is a recessive gene from one of his ancestors, or from all of our ancestors, who were in fact giants. I mean, it's hard to disprove something that you can't really prove, or that you can't disprove. It's hard to go along saying, "Oh no, this just didn't happen," when they're finding bones more and more every year, proving that hey, this did in fact happen. Now, yes, that they found remains from people, from what was it, Nebraska man. It was supposed to be one of the evolutionary steps between Neanderthal and Homo sapien, that they ended up disproving, saying it was bones from an ancient pig carcass. Yes, they find those too, but you can't really disprove saying that no, because they don't have a genetic background to test it against, saying if they're real or not. I mean, it's hard to fake something that is actually bone that simulates a human femur.
Right.
Or a human skull, or even the tip of your metacarpal. It's hard to recreate those that in a giant proportion and make it toward carbon dates thousands of years old, or even hundreds of years old.
Well, and I'm probably I don't really know what everybody's stance is, but I believe in evolution, but I don't believe that we evolved from apes. I think that there's obviously evidence that humans are getting bigger, stronger, faster, and maybe, like you said, it's due to recessive genes and the fact that supplements are better than ever, food's better than ever. All these things that we have that are in existence right now. But I personally don't believe that one day apes just turned into humans and the apes still exist. I don't believe that there's any species that have ever existed that evolved into something else that it still existed in the outdated persona.
No.
Or the outdated...
Now there is evidence of Homo sapien and Homo erectus, which was Neanderthals, coexisting for a period of time.
Well, yeah, we killed them out. So we're eating a corn dog.
Just randomly pulls it out of his pocket. Thanks. Ruined my train of thought.
Well, they did. They killed off the Neanderthals, and they bred into it with a lot of them too.
Yeah, they did, but there's a body of evidence proving where they coexisted for a while.
Yeah, they killed them too.
Yeah. So again, giants and the giant species, whatever you want to call it, Homo gigantus or whatever it is, and Homo sapiens. Who's to say that for a while that they didn't coexist peacefully until it was just the point where we knew it was going to happen.
Hey.
We knew it was going to happen.
Hey guys.
Jeez, we're filming over here.
Oh no.
Jeez, man.
I just
I'm
was
kidding,
so
James.
sorry,
I
guys.
love you.
I told him.
James is in the building, y'all.
Oh yeah.
I just want to point out
That
that
was so
Kellen.
cool,
I know I just blew my pocket.
I told him to come in here.
Well, no, I also want to point out that before we even started this, Kellen said James is going to show up really late and just walk in while we're mid sentence on something and just ruin the train of thought.
But to me, it would be far more likely that they were descendants of ours, that because of the atmosphere was different, that they were able to exist in a bigger form. And then when the atmosphere changed, we obviously kept getting smaller. And now, because the world is smaller than it ever has been, not in size or miles or anything like that, but in the fact that we have technologies to get from point A to point B, the fact that, we have races that are now able to come to America, or we go over there and now we intermingle and we form different, I don't even know what the word would be.
You're trying to say that we've just kind of been bred out.
No, what I'm saying is, I think that the way that we breed between different races and everything else now changes the human species itself, in the fact that, there's no way that you can breed those species and not have something change.
Jeez, way to go, Mike.
Yeah, well, hey, that's still not as intrusive as James just walking in.
James wasn't on camera though.
Oh, he was on camera.
Yeah, he was on camera.
And you've been on your phone off and on all night, so
Who do you think I was talking to?
This has gone off the rails.
Hey, it's conspiracy theories. It's supposed to. There are no rails when it comes to conspiracy theories.
But I mean, I truly believe that we evolve as humans by there's so many different races that have now come together, and I feel like that almost certainly we either get better or worse, with the different attributes that we all have as races or whatever it may be, and that further progresses the human race itself. And I feel like we're a product of our atmosphere, of our breeding and everything else. And so why wouldn't these giants back in former times in a different atmosphere, they would have to be huge to survive dinosaurs and everything else. So, why would their existence change?
I'm not saying they're around that time period.
I mean, there was a bear that was like 20 foot tall.
Yeah.
A short-faced bear that existed in North America. So if we're going to go off we know for a fact that bear existed.
And it went extinct.
Right. But if we're going to go that bear was in existence, why would humans not have to be larger? Because
I'm not arguing that by no means. By no means am I arguing that. I'm not arguing the fact that giants existed. I firmly believe that they did, and because there are parts where we just don't go.
See, I'm on the fence about it because, I think aliens is a little bit more subjective in that what you're going to believe, right or not, but giants, all of the evidence that I've seen has been ridiculous. Like they'll show a video and they'll be like, this was a femur that was found in Ohio in 1986, and then you go to the next article and it's the same guy holding that femur up and like this is a femur that was found in Russia in 1973. And it's like, you don't know what to believe unless you're there and you see them actually dig it out of the ground. And if like for a fact the Smithsonian destroyed these bones back in the day or didn't destroy the bones, the only thing that we know for sure is that it's been a part of legend and folklore going back generations. And we know for a fact that the atmosphere was much different thousands of years ago that could have produced much larger species. I mean,
Absolutely.
Even the plant life was bigger.
Yeah. And 90% of legends and folklore are somewhere based in truth.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
When you boil it down to the basic of it, it's rooted somewhere in reality and truth.
I don't know if I believe that or not. I mean, I think that I think that the human imagination is so vast and so expansive. It's probably just as vast as the universe that we were talking about earlier with all the galaxies. Because
absolutely,
the different chemicals, the different mind states, and everything like that can create altered states of what they believe is reality. And so you could have a lot of this folklore that it's kind of like the telephone game. I tell you something, and then he tells you, and then you tell James, and what James says is going to be completely different from what I said, and that's what we're going on because there's not a lot of this.
Not a lot of primary sources.
Well, there's not even a lot of documentation because even if you look at like the Dead Sea Scrolls, I just read an article yesterday that talked about James from the Bible, and it was a excerpt from a book that was found in Egypt in like the 40s or 50s, and it's been hidden away probably by the Catholic Church because I believe that the Catholic Church probably has more documentation than we could ever possibly fathom.
Absolutely. That's another conspiracy that's for another time.
Yeah.
But
what I was going to say was that in this excerpt, there was things that were somewhat different from Jesus' teaching in the Bible, and James was calling himself Jesus' brother. Nobody knows if it's by blood or by spirit or whatever you want to say, but his teachings were completely different from what was in the Bible, so they believe this is why this was lost in translation. And so that's just an example of some type of documentation that we have from the past, like the Dead Sea Scrolls that were not included in the Bible. And we don't know why. Do we know if they're true? Do we know if they're false? Do they know if it's legend or folklore?
Again, that right there is a completely other conspiracy because who's to say that the Bible is true?
But I think it goes hand in hand with what we're saying because you're saying that the folklore that's been passed down for generations. Well, we don't know how much of that folklore was lost. We don't know how much of that folklore was excluded because it differed with the ideas of the past.
True.
We don't know what those people believed in. Like, there's firm believers in the King James Version of the Bible. We can only read this King James Version. We can't read the New International Version or whatever it may be. The problem with it is that when you're transferring something from language to language, when you're transferring something,
there's always going to be something.
And there's somebody like King James that's making a decision on what gets included, what gets excluded. I mean, we're still humans. We still make decisions on what I want to include, what I want to exclude. You never know what their mindset is.
Absolutely.
So how much is lost in translation?
See, that's my biggest problem with modern day religion. Do I believe that there is an all-powerful being? Yeah, I do. Do I believe it's what the Bible says? No, absolutely not. I have a hard time believing something that man himself has written.
And I agree with that because I believe that there was decisions in time that were made to be what we put in there and what we don't put in there. And who's to say that the stuff that we didn't put in there, like this book of James that they found that's been hidden, or the Dead Sea Scrolls, was not just as important, and some old guy with an opinion didn't make an opinion.
Absolutely.
A decision on what was going to be excluded.
And that's my biggest issue with, if you do go to the Bible, the King James Version is what King James wanted in there. For instance, modern day reference, kind of. Do you know why we call a foot, a length of measurement a foot?
No.
Some king way back in the day decided, that's going to be a foot. Go ahead and see how long that is. That's how he got a foot. An inch, they'd say, okay, well, this is what we're going to call an inch.
Mike could completely be making this shit.
Oh, no, I very well could be.
I think the book is correct, but I'm sure that since then it's been some scientific part. I'm sure it's how it originated.
That's what I'm saying, though.
I'm just glad we didn't measure James's foot.
Do not do that.
That's what I'm saying, though. It started as some royal member somewhere saying, well, I want to call this the length of my foot is going to be called a foot from now on.
I think the legend goes it changed per king, and that's what they had some kind of mess up over.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
How many different versions of the Bible are there? Or even take, for instance, other religions.
Well, how much of it was lost from going to Aramaic to Greek to English to
or going
Greek.
From whatever it was before King James to King James? Because he didn't.
Going down the tunnel again.
That's fine, man.
But I think it goes.
Take this trip down the rabbit hole with me, brother.
I think
you're gonna be good.
I think it goes hand in hand with what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say is I don't think that we're ever going to be able to prove unless we do expansive archaeological digs that shows us skeletons that shows us some type of, writing or pottery or something of this lost civilization of giants to ever be able to prove it one way or another. Because I don't feel like eyewitness testimony. I don't feel like legends.
Isn't
and
he
folklore.
supposed to be devil's advocate and skeptic?
I mean,
I got a list of things I want to go. I've got.
Well, I'm probably have to excuse myself here in a minute for just a minute, but that's fine.
That's just my belief system is that, and it's what I feel like it's what I have to believe. Even like with something like JFK, I feel like that we're never going to know the truth, and we almost have to accept that because there's no possible way for us to say one way or the other without actually visually seeing it, because we can't trust legend, we can't trust folklore. There's only so many things that we can actually trust as viable evidence that we can put our hands on to be able to know one way or the other.
And I agree. I mean, I absolutely agree.
So that's my point to all this was in looking into giants in North America. It's so subjective, and even the pictures that they say these are giant bones. You read another article that's using the same freaking picture, and you don't know what to believe.
And I do agree with you. And again, this is something I'm kind of, I play both sides of the fence on. There's arguments for against and arguments for. Personally, I lean more towards the for side of it. Do I believe that there were giants all over the world, not just America, but all over the world at one point in time? Yes. Do I think they were the reigning civilization? No. I personally believe they're more minority at that point. Kind of like, and
I would think that with all the things that we've discussed with the different atmospheres and making it more prominent for larger beings, larger, animals, larger plant life, everything else, I would think that they had to be the prominent thing. Whether they existed in mass wide numbers, I don't know the answer to that, because I feel like, even though that we would be super large back then, we would still be a hunted being by dinosaurs. And so, and that could be a reason where we haven't found more bones, because the dinosaurs could be eating us and we could, being hunted.
It very well could be.
Dinosaurs were way before humans.
Yeah.
Like when you look at the scale, like, what's that show, The Cosmos, when talking about it.
That means
we went to Calvary. You all remember the church trip, and they made us watch the video that was so absurd. It said we lived along with dinosaurs.
It was, because there's absolutely no physical evidence, anywhere that humans and dinosaurs ever coexisted at the same time.
Time out though. There's no possible way we could know that, because we think, okay, humans are X number of years old, and then we find sites like Globekli Templia that show that there's some type of buried, hidden civilization that carbon dates what we knew of before. And then they go and they find a cave in the middle of nowhere that has hooks that shows fish bones that we were out to sea like 10,000 years ago, well before anybody thought that anybody had a long-range sea-bearing craft. And so I don't feel like that we can definitively say.
Time when you look, the amount of human time that humans have been recorded.
Known.
Yeah, and then there's millions of years, and there's dinosaurs.
But that number keeps jumping back.
It does keep jumping back, but again, that can go back to our point of aliens.
Maybe thousands of years.
It could. All right, I got to excuse myself for just a minute.
I feel like we should end the giant thing. Do you want something to drink, James?
You talk about your points while I'll be right back.
All right. Well, I mean, like the way the time works, like dinosaurs are way back here, and then like this is empty space and humans. But
I think it would be interesting to look into, and I wish I would have done this now, but when our atmosphere changed and stopped being so conducive towards, larger foliage, larger, animal species and everything like that, and how that coincides with the existence of dinosaurs versus the existence of humans. Because I truly believe, like, there's no possible way. It's kind of like, all of our theories evolve, and then it seems like they almost devolve, such as, like, the Earth. Everybody thought the Earth was square, and then next thing you know, it's round, and now there's people saying it's flat again. So, I mean,
there's just too
that's
big
just ignorance.
Time is just too big for it to even be possible. Just like I believe in evolution. I think evolution can coexist with religion. We share 99.9% 0.9% DNA with chimpanzees and bonobos. I mean, so we had to come from the same kind of family. But I mean, it could still be God's an architect. That's the way he, wanted it to be. Like we came from this way. We're the chosen part. We evolved up into what we are now.
Which Mike says is useless because of smartphones. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It really is, man. Smartphones are the downfall of society.
Okay.
They're making society dumber as
let's
a
not
whole.
jump
But they
back
can
into that.
coexist, and that church trip we went on, that's kind of funny because I always remember that. Like even then, I was like,
And I don't
What's that
remember
called?
anything
talking-
about
are you-
that.
we were at
talking-
Boots Creek retreat.
Oh man,
And it's
I
this
know which
room,
one he's talking
and
about.
It's made by the Ken Ham guy. I'm pretty sure the guy who does the Noah's Ark Museum. He did the Creationist Museum too. Yeah, but it's just a.
I
some of the stuff's
remember the
absurd,
trip
but-
because the location.
I feel like
was
we need
secret.
to we need to research this more,
Yeah.
and this needs to be the topic that's rolled over to our next podcast because we need to research a lot of the timelines and the atmospheres
Yeah.
and everything else.
We'll
So,
watch the call.
So are we going from a conspiracy one to a scientific one?
What?
We going from a conspiracy? Are we going from
I feel like you have to
I don't
apply
think any of us
scientific
are.
things,
I mean,
theories to conspiracy theories.
You do, but
Otherwise,
the
we'll never
way
solve
the
them.
way this topic is going to go, it's going to be more scientific driven than conspiracy theory.
We may have to get
I don't
someone
think so.
on who actually knows science besides us.
Who knows Neil deGrasse
Yeah.
Neil Tyson deGrasse?
You, I know you out there, boy.
We're using bro science right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so to kind of transition completely from everything else that we're talking about, something that
The crown jewel.
is a big as far as kind of the branches that goes off in this conspiracy, but something that we can actually prove and visually see because of pictures and technology that we have now is the JFK conspiracy. It's obviously been the one that's the closest to my heart because I can actually prove and research a lot more into eyewitness testimony, into video, into pictures and everything that shows what happened. So I feel like maybe I'm going to take something that you did earlier and we'll try to figure out what we actually believe before we discuss it. So do you believe the rhetoric that we were given that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, he's the
No.
lone gunman, he's the one that shot Kennedy, and everything that we've been told?
No, there's too much evidence that points to multiple gunmen, different type of agencies and groups being involved than just a lone disgraced Marine who defected to Russia, pulling a trigger.
What about you, Dave?
Lee Harvey Oswald, I think too, that the government's did a job on him, like saying that he wasn't a good marksman, saying all this about him. I don't think he acted alone, but maybe the evidence does point that he is probably the only shooter, just because why would they hide it?
Because
he pulled those shots off from the tower. We'll go into why.
Yeah, we're gonna go into a lot later.
Yeah, but,
Okay, so
I
what
think
about,
for sure
what
it's
about
a
you,
Soviet.
James? We'll spring you into this
Are
conversation.
you already drunk?
Like you guys said, I think he wasn't, acting alone. I'm sure the government he knew something about, the workings, of.
So that's a good starting point. We've kind of got 3 different perspectives on it. We'll go through it and we'll see if the perspectives
we all
actually
agree that.
change.
Yeah.
So, to me, when I look at JFK, all I think of is like conspiracies within conspiracies, because you read about one conspiracy and it turns into another, which turns into another. And even within JFK, you have people that were very close to his life. Whoa, like Martin Luther King and Marilyn Monroe, and there's both conspiracies about their death. I mean, you said that
There's large question marks in all 3 of those deaths. Marilyn Monroe supposedly overdosed.
yeah,
And yes, she was known to partake in
Right.
extracurricular activities, but if I'm not mistaken, the amounts that was in her system are astronomical.
well, not only that, but there was no pill residues in her stomach whatsoever.
Yeah,
Basically there was barbiturates in her bloodstream, but there was nothing in her stomach that suggested that it was from pills. And the most common theory that I got was that she was given some type of barbiturate concoction through
injection.
No, not through injection, because
Really?
they didn't find any injection on it. It was actually through like the anal cavity. They literally injected in that, absorbed it in the body, and killed
They
it.
said, hold on a second.
But she was obviously well known to be involved with Kennedy himself. You know, there's
The whole family.
there's theories that she was with Robert as well. You know, so it kind of goes off, and then Martin Luther King is a whole other conspiracy. So this hole never seems to be ending. Like you jump into the rabbit hole with the JFK thing, and then
it branches off to so many.
You're focused here, and then you're like, oh, Marilyn Monroe. Oh, Robert Kennedy. Oh, MLK.
This is one of the biggest things that got me into conspiracy theories. I can't remember how many years ago. It was back when we were living together. We were just back and forth going and finding conspiracy theory videos on YouTube, which isn't the greatest source to find stuff on by no means.
It's like Wikipedia, bro.
Right. Yeah. But it's just the points that some of these people make and some of the facts that they bring out. It really starts to make you think. And we were looking. It's going to seem off topic, but I'll get around to it. We started off with 9/11 and how the different theories with that, and it ended up with a video that started on 9/11 and ended with JFK and tied it all together in such a way that it really made me sit down and rethink a lot of things. Which to me, I think is the whole point of... To me,
changed his life, man.
It kind of did. Because to me, I think that's the whole point of conspiracy theories. It's to open your eyes to see the bigger picture and not just what they're trying to force feed you through media and social media and your cell phones.
They're listening, man.
The man's outside again, y'all.
I need my Faraday cage.
The feds are watching.
But it's... To me, that's the whole point of conspiracy theories. It's to try to open people up to the bigger picture of the infinite possibilities of things that could actually be.
Well, let's talk about the things that
we know
for certain. So we know for a fact that a ton of people wanted JFK dead. You have
the Russians,
the Cubans, the Russians, the mob, the CIA possibly. There was
I read it or saw and saw a theory earlier this week, going as far fetched as Mickey Mantle. I'm not even kidding. No, because Mickey Mantle and Monroe were married for 9 months.
Not Mickey Mantle. It was
DiMaggio. I'm sorry, DiMaggio. But they were married for 9 months, and he was so heartbroken when she left him, and there was all the rumors surrounding her and JFK and her and Robert Kennedy, that he pulled some of the strings he had to get him killed.
Just want to let you know.
DiMaggio could have got any other woman, though.
True. And again, this is way, way, way out of left field.
Yeah. But
baseball pun not intended.
I want to let you know that if you ever talk bad about Mickey Mantle again, you're going to this table.
It was unintentional.
So obviously, there's a well-established list that goes beyond what I knew about, that Mike knows about, of people.
That goes with every president, though.
And I don't agree with that. Because every president didn't have as many enemies that he's made. Because you look at the mob. The mob, he was well established in with Sinatra and Giancana and all these people that he was seen with that were a part of his funding, that were a part of helping him get elected. And the next thing you know, he puts Bobby Kennedy as head of the Justice Department, and Bobby Kennedy's going after the mob. You've got the Cubans, who were kind of at a standstill with, and that we've launched so many things with the Northwoods Project to where we're trying to go to war with them, and we're making all these scenarios. And then you have the Bay of Pigs, where we're trying to help the Cuban revolutionists go in there, and we kind of abandoned them basically because we started the whole thing, and then there were so many botches as far as air support goes, and then ultimately Kennedy decided, because of the backlash, he wasn't going to send the air support in, and you have the CIA that's behind the Bay of Pigs that he pisses off. So you got the Cubans and the mob and the CIA
kind of pissing on their field with Cuba,
and Russians were involved with Cuba, and I mean, there's just so many people that he made mad. Now, as far as who he made mad compared to who Trump made mad, maybe we have a conversation there. But as far as Kennedy compared to other presidents in the past, I mean, every president's going to have his enemies, but being susceptible in the 60s with, a lot of the technologies that we have now compared to then, I feel like that he was much more open to these attacks and much more open to these
I'm
people.
gonna be honest, I tried finding this so I can bring it up, but I couldn't. And I know you've seen it, and Davey, I'm pretty sure you've seen it before. But there's a list out there of the comparisons between Kennedy and Lincoln that is absolutely mind-boggling.
Not only that, but
they go way beyond.
No, he's talking about
Lincoln was such a way better president.
No. He's talking about the year they were elected, the age.
Like a parallel.
His secretary's name was Kennedy.
Kennedy's
Kennedy's
secretary
Lincoln,
and he was shot in a Lincoln, and that's what that one was. He was shot in a Lincoln, and Lincoln was killed in Fort Theater. Or something like that.
Kennedy, I don't know. But not only that, but he slept in the Lincoln bedroom when he got elected, which is not, customary. He joked whenever the Bay of Pigs and the Cold War ended that maybe he should go to the movie theater now. I mean, there's so many things. And then when he died, Jacqueline Kennedy literally made everything exactly the way that Lincoln's funeral was. So it was in the same room. It was with the same thing. It took the same route. I mean, so many. Yeah, you're right. Completely.
There's so many comparisons between the two, and there's a big conspiracy behind the Lincoln assassination.
Right, and the Lincoln.
There was a huge conspiracy behind it.
And it went farther than just Lincoln himself because they were going to try to take out the vice president.
There's a great movie about that called The Conspirator. You gotta watch it. It's pretty good.
I will.
Yeah, gotta check it out, y'all.
So getting back to what we know, let's talk about Oswald for a little bit because obviously he's the centerpiece to all of this. So he was a Russian defector, as he said.
Supposed.
No, he literally lived.
He
literally lived in Russia.
I knew his wife was Russian.
Married a Russian woman.
Okay, I didn't know he actually officially defected.
He renounced his U.S. citizenship, had to reapply to come back in the country. So I mean, it's well documented. He was absolutely. Now we don't know if he was
conspiracy in that too, though.
Yeah, we don't know whose side he was playing for.
Yeah, because there's a big conspiracy that he was actually an undercover CIA operative. And he was part of, I can't remember the name of the program.
But it's CIA and FBI. There's so many branches to it.
Where he was stationed when he was actually in the Marines overseas, there was actually a very large CIA operation going on there at the time too, where they actually believed that he was actually tapped and then became a CIA operative, and the whole defection was actually brought up. It was actually part of his whole cover story to get more intel on the Russians.
And that kind of ties in with his possible CIA and FBI connections that everybody talk about. He attempted to get a Cuban visa right before the assassination attempt. Something that stood out to me, he had an IQ of like 118. So obviously he was a very, very
intelligent. That's what I'm saying.
intelligent.
Like you always hear that he wasn't very smart. He got kicked out of the Marines. Wasn't a good soldier, but he was a smart guy, and he could actually shoot well too. From all the stories,
from what
I've heard,
from what I heard, basically he could shoot when he wanted to, and he just kind of was. He didn't really care about anything.
Yeah,
which is.
But he was an intellectual. But they kind of make it seem like he's not like.
Well, it also is kind of counterintuitive because they talk about him wanting to be a great person, and you would think if he wanted to be great that he would have a little bit of drive. So maybe he was a little bit like. Everybody should hand me this because I'm smart and blah, blah, blah.
Well, that too could be part of the smear job against him. I mean, he was like a Marxist leftist, but like extreme Marxist. But I mean, he could have just, I don't know.
But other things we know about him, he paid like $19 for this rifle that he supposedly killed Kennedy with.
Yeah, and shot a moving. And the rifle really, like you said, it was $19, which at the time, it's not uncommon, but it's not a rifle you're going to go purchase to go and do.
Well, they talk about him buying a .38, which he actually killed the police officer with later in the day that he shot Kennedy. And the .38 revolver was more expensive than his $19 rifle because it was an Italian surplus rifle and it had been sawed off to actually be shorter than normal.
And you wouldn't think somebody trying to make that accurate of a shot.
Well, we'll talk about the shot because
there's a lot of. I'm not going too far into the shot with this, I'm just more talking about, that shot did have to be extremely accurate, yes. On a moving target at such a distance, why are you going to skimp on your rifle? I wouldn't, would you?
I don't think when he bought the rifle he actually intended to kill anybody with it. I think that it was more of just like I'm going to buy this, and like one of the first things he did was take pictures with the communist newspapers that he had. Like there's a famous picture of him holding the rifle with the 38 Special tucked in his belt, and I think it was more of just like it makes my thing bigger because I got a rifle and I got a 38 Special.
Part of like the Marxist thing at the time was Che Guevara, that kind of rebellious dude going around killing people.
But I think his more had tied into Cuba as opposed to like Che.
But at that time, Che had been gone from Cuba, but
right.
Still kind of that whole leftist guerrilla thing that Cuba embraced.
And he kind of had his life surrounded a little bit by people that were kind of more thinking towards him. George de Mohrenschildt was somebody that befriended Lee Harvey Oswald. He's kind of a secretive character. There's a lot of people that say he had CIA ties. He meets Oswald. He introduces him and his wife to Ruth Payne, which is actually where Maria Oswald lived at the time of the assassination, which is like in Irving, Texas, outside of Dallas. And Ruth Payne's actually the one that gets him the job at the book depository. So
his pictures are in his backyard too. The pictures of him with the rifle he killed Kennedy with, the famous pictures, are in Mohrenschildt's backyard.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's an interesting factor. But he actually tried to kill the former General Walker, who was an anti-communist before this. Walker was sitting in his study, and it was like a 40-yard shot, and something to do with the window pane. It actually caused a bullet to deflect and miss Walker's head by like 3 inches. So he had a 40-yard shot at a stationary target that he missed, which to me is a little bit hard to take in, but at the same time, they actually said that it deflected and only missed by 3 inches, so it was a relatively close shot. But at 40 yards, you would think that would be a cakewalk. And that was his first attempt to try to kill a leader. His second attempt was actually President Nixon. Well, he wasn't president back then, but it was Nixon who was coming to Dallas to do a speech. And this time he took his 38 Special, and Maria locked him in a bathroom and would not let him leave, which I thought was hilarious. This big, great man. His wife locked him in the bathroom. And how different would history have been if Lee Harvey Oswald had shot Nixon that day and not shot Kennedy?
We wouldn't have to.
See, I didn't know that he tried to kill Nixon. Nixon was governor.
I didn't either.
Well,
wasn't he?
There's no official.
So.
There's no official.
Okay, it's just a story.
Maria told him this. Said that he got dressed up in a suit. He tucked the 38 Special in his waistband, buttoned his suit, and was going to leave. And she said that he was the type of person that was too impulsive, and she felt like that she was going to kill him, or he was going to kill him. And so she forced him in the bathroom, locked him, and let him leave. So he missed that. So you have two prior attempts at obviously a lot lower levels than, the president of the United States. But the fact remains, he was surrounded by kind of Russian cloudy figures in the Mohrenschildt and Ruth Payne that nobody really knows how their connections. Nobody really knows if they're connected with our government, with the Russian government, etc.
And kind of like what David said earlier, and what you said, that he could shoot when he wanted to. When you look at his they've released some of his military records, and his marksmanship was absolutely atrocious.
No, that's not true. That's actually a false narrative. His marksmanship was acceptable, but not exceptional.
But they always made it seem. They always made a point to tell you.
Well, you're talking about a marksmanship with a rifle that was probably M1 Garand at the time, which is open sight. It's a 30-06, which is a bigger caliber, has a lot more recoil, gas operated, and semi-automatic, and it's not going to be nearly as accurate as a bolt action rifle.
No, it won't. But at the same time, now you're talking about a rifle that has been altered, where like you said, the barrel has been shortened. Once that barrel gets shortened, the accuracy gets cut.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll talk about more about that.
The Mohrenschildt, that's actually like, he's like such an interesting character and all. I think he's like the most interesting because he was really close friends with Jackie Kennedy's family. His nephew was George H.W. Bush's roommate at prep school.
Yeah.
He's got ties to everybody.
Right, and de Mohrenschildt also he was being investigated and was going to have to come forth in the 70s for testimony. And before this, he had actually wrote George H.W. Bush, who was the current leader of the CIA, a letter basically asking for help in all of the attention that he was getting. He was
saying for him to stop bugging his house and
right.
stuff. He killed himself shortly after that, but that's part of the new dump that just came out of all the information.
But the interesting part that I found about him killing himself is that Bill O'Reilly was actually knocking on his door at the time that he killed himself. Bill O'Reilly, who was very interested in the Kennedy assassination and then wrote Killing Kennedy
wrote the book on it.
Later on, he was actually knocking on George de Montshield's door at the moment that George de Montchield, it was his daughter's house, but George de Montchield was inside there and killed himself whenever he knocked on the door.
He's such an interesting character because throughout, he introduced him to all the study groups he was going to.
Right.
Oswald's going to all the left Marxist groups that they're going to. But before in his life, he had been accused of being a fascist. His brother was an anti-communist, and it kind of makes you wonder if he was like on the side of the government, like working for the CIA or something.
Right.
Like, I think that's where the big conspiracy lies. I think, in my opinion.
Right, and to have the ear of the leader of the CIA, I mean, that's a pretty big.
Maybe even have him just to answer your letter back.
Well, and somebody else that's obviously very prominent in the story, I actually had him written down for later, but we can go ahead and talk about him before we actually talk about Giancana. But Jack Ruby, there's so many people that says that Jack Ruby has ties beyond the local scheme. To me, Jack Ruby didn't seem like that super intelligent a guy, but he was obviously a very prominent figure in Dallas because he owned a strip joint, and he was, they said, friends with everybody. The gangsters, the police officers, the press.
That was his personality. And actually, not that long ago, I saw a movie. It was actually called Ruby. It was about Jack Ruby. He had a personality where he just attracted everybody to him.
Right.
But going on with what you said with his ties, he had ties to the mafia all over the country.
Right.
And again, so he ties into the mafia aspect of this theory, where they wanted him dead because of all the other stuff. That he was just more a pawn in the mafia's scheme.
But he was also an avid Democrat, and he was actually going out to take an ad out the day that Kennedy was killed, and he found out that Kennedy was killed, and he changed his ad to state that the club was basically going to be closed all weekend in reverence for Kennedy's assassination. And, he showed up at all these press conferences that Oswald had and ultimately killed him at one of those. And because he was such close friends with the press and stuff, they just let him right in. And he had a .38, Cobra in his pocket, and that's ultimately what he shot Oswald with. But, there's so many connections that he has with not only the mob, as you said, but a lot of people said that he was close with law enforcement and above law enforcement like FBI, CIA.
Well, I mean,
and there's no way that you're ever going to know that.
No, you're not. And local law, in the type of industry he had, that he worked in, that he operated his business in, you have to have close connections.
That's true.
In local law enforcement and just beyond local law enforcement, but local government as a whole, you have to have connections in that, because one minor slip up, especially in the southern part of the country, that with that type of business, you only need one nail in the coffin, and your whole business is dead.
Well, and something else I feel like you have to take into factor with Jack Ruby is that a lot of people said that he knew he was sick before he killed Oswald, because ultimately he died of cancer in prison. And so, to me, if you're going to look at people to carry out this whole conspiracy, you look at Oswald, who's so anxious to be a great man, who's looking for a cause, and to me it would be relatively easy to talk this guy into it. And it's the same kind of.
And then you have to cover your own tracks. You already know you're dying.
Tracks, and you got Jack Ruby who's dying, who obviously wants to be close and feel important, and they could make him out to be a hero. Be like, you're probably going to go to jail, but you're dying anyway.
Yeah.
Put a bullet in him and end it all. So, I mean, I feel like that Oswald's life was just surrounded by these people. The corn dog thing is ridiculous. I cannot believe he had a corn dog.
I wish I had another one. I was thinking that.
I mean, he's just pulling stuff out of his pockets now, guys. It's getting a little weird.
I think he missed that. I think James.
Oh, he did.
I was eating when he came in.
So
he said he wished he had one.
Yeah. So at the same time, these people that are surrounding Oswald, you also have shadowy figures in the exterior like Giancana, who's a mobster. And obviously, with Robert Kennedy's attack on the mob, basically John F. Kennedy's disassociation with Frank Sinatra and Giancana and all these people, even Marilyn Monroe, who he was involved with at one point in time, and basically saw a point where he thought that he was going to be outed or exposed for this relationship that he was having with her, and he just disassociates with all of it. And Giancana was a guy that was actually going to be called to testify around the same time as DeMornshield, and they found him dead in his home. And he was shot in the back of the head, and I guess whenever he fell and rolled over, they shot him 6 more times in the face. So you obviously have an assassination on this dude. Was it mob related, or was it related to something that he may have known?
Occupational hazard.
It could be occupational hazard. It could be having to deal with the whole assassination, and that assassination could obviously it could have everything to do with the mob. It could have nothing to do with the mob, and it could be CIA or Russian or whatever, and it could be one of those agencies that we don't know who it is going in just saying, okay, well, this guy might actually reveal what we don't want to be revealed.
You would think
so
if he was
what they did with the one shot in the head was more than enough to shut his mouth. Obviously, the other 6 shots in the head, I think, was more a statement to anybody else involved.
Right.
Telling you, hey, this will happen to you and your family if you open your mouth.
You would think as a mobster, though, that he would have took the necessary precautions to prevent that from happening. And so maybe...
That's why I don't think that his death was actually mob-related.
I mean,
I think that his involvement with JFK's assassination has absolutely nothing to do with the mob. I really do. Yes, he's a gangster. He has a lot of mob affiliations. I don't think his association with the assassination...
I'm not sure that he was associated with the assassination. I just felt like it was a point that should be brought up because of the way that he was actually killed.
True.
Because he was assassinated.
Yes, but like you said, he was getting ready to call to testify for the assassination, correct?
And maybe it was just the fact that...
So he was a person of interest.
Bobby Kennedy and the rest of the, administration that was left over didn't want him talking about what he knew about JFK because they did everything that they could do to protect JFK's name, and all of the affairs and everything else was hidden because basically the White House for a long period of time was just a carousel of women that they were bringing in for JFK all the time.
Oh yeah, but you have to have rooms and passageways down underneath, supposedly.
It wasn't even that deep. They just basically brought him in, and I feel like that Jackie Kennedy essentially knew that he was having these extramarital affairs, that all the Kennedys did that, and then just turned her back on it.
And that takes us into another theory.
Well, a lot of times she was gone too. She wasn't even there, and they planned it around the times that she was not going to be there.
But I don't think that this man's assassination actually has anything to do with the mob. I don't think his association with the assassination in whatever capacity it was has anything to do with the mob. I think it was whatever underlying shadowy figure or organization that was involved, that he was involved with also, did it as a statement.
I feel like that's far more a likely candidate for what actually happened to him, as opposed to him being actually involved in any way. I don't feel like the mob has the connections to carry out an assassination and not get caught, basically.
Without some kind of retribution from the United States government.
Yeah, they would have completely eradicated the mob. Yeah. I feel like that it pissed them off that JFK disassociated with them, but I'm not sure that it pissed them off enough to kill him.
Yeah, the presidents came after Kennedy, like Johnson and Nixon. Those two dudes were like powerful. They could just go.
Look how long the mob's been around.
Yeah.
But they do a lot of bad stuff, but they're also smart in how they execute it.
But Giancana and Sinatra were there for even he was partying with them the night that he was going to go and do his commencement speech, after he got elected. So, they were all there. I don't feel like that anything that JFK could have done to disassociate with them, they probably understood that as business, as being
that's what I'm saying. If they were going to do something, they as a whole look at the history of the mob, the way they do things, generally they're very smart about it. They know if they were to go after him while he's in office is extremely stupid for them as a whole. Not just an individual, but as a whole. So going after him while he's in office, ignorant. If they were to do something, more likely it would have been when he was out of office.
That makes sense. So we've kind of covered the main players that I had listed. There's obviously players that go outside of this, but these are the people that, in my opinion, were closest to that. and just interesting with like the Giancana. So, the problems that I have with the narrative that we've been given as opposed to what happened the day of. The number one thing that changed everything for me and for them, obviously, because you have the Warren Commission that carries out this full investigation of it. They come up with their findings, and then 10 years later, they reveal the Zapruder film. And I think the Zapruder film changes everything. I sent you guys links to it. Hopefully you watched it.
I did.
So, being someone that shoots guns quite frequently, that has shot animals, obviously, and seeing the way that they react when they're hit with a high power caliber, to me, the Zapruder film is the most compelling evidence for there being more than one shooter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to put this in as simplistic terms as I possibly can. If you turn and you face that way and I punch you in the side of the head, your head is going to move a certain way due to momentum alone.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watch that, I see his head move. Now, the number one argument that I've seen against that, or 1 and 2, is that it was his nerves that were reacting. And then the number 2 thing would be the fact that he had a certain back brace that he wore that covered not only his back but into his legs that made him very rigid. And so that could have made the reason that his body reacted the way that he did. All of that may be true. The nerves may kick in, but to me, the number one factor is that the momentum would carry his head a certain way, and then if his nerves kicked in, it wouldn't be.
It would have jerked it the opposite.
It would have been not necessarily at the moment of impact. You still would have had some type of movement from the impact, and then been carried away.
It would have been a delayed reaction
because you look and his body actually moves forward, and when he gets hit with the first bullet that goes through his chest, his body moves forward and his arms come up because he's shot through the throat. That's a natural reaction. But then you see when it gets in the head, it's obviously very sharp this way, back and to the left, as the famous quote goes. So to me, the Zapruder film is the undeniable thing that I can't get over. I've watched it a million times. People say that the arterial spray went forward. Well, the problem with that is
they're moving.
Not only are they moving, but if he has veins and arteries in the front of his head, and it's going to squirt that out, because they talk about his head squirting blood all the way to the hospital and beyond that. Your arteries are going to pump that out. It's not going to go back. I mean, it's going to come out this way, and then it's going to go back. And so a lot of the sprays that you see come out here, but then they ultimately go back, which, I don't really know what to make of it, but I know that for a fact that bits and fragments of his skull were actually on the trunk. Obviously when somebody gets shot in the head and it explodes the way that his head did, it's going to squirt stuff everywhere. But to me, the telling part was the fact that the skull fragments, which are obviously going to be heavier than brain or arterial fragments, were on the trunk. I don't know if I believe that Jackie Kennedy, in fact, jumped up on the trunk to put his head back together. I think she was getting the hell out of there. I mean,
see, and I saw some theories that it wasn't somebody shooting, so say they're here, they're saying the shooting came from this way. I've seen theories where it was people actually saying Jackie actually had a handgun on her, and shot him herself as retaliation for knowing about Marilyn Monroe and all the other women he slept with while they were together, and that her actually going onto the trunk wasn't to grab the actual pieces of skull, but to somehow hide the weapon.
Yeah.
When something happens that fast, you're not gonna think about skull pieces. You're gonna think gun.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's no way she would kill him in public.
No. But if you watch the video, what happens is JFK gets shot. He gets shot in the throat. The driver said that he thought that he heard JFK's voice say, "Oh my God, I'm hit." I don't know if I believe that or not, just because of the area that he was shot. But I think that if you watch in slow motion, Jackie's first response is to actually look at Governor Connolly. Because Governor Connolly's turning around at the time, at the exact moment that JFK was shot the first time, the First Lady Governor had actually said, "See, Texas loves you." And that's when the first shot happened. And Connolly was actually turning around to say something to JFK. Well, that first bullet went through JFK's throat, went through the seat, and hit Connolly. And Connolly was actually turning around, and I feel like he probably shouted out in pain because he got hit in the back rib area. It went through his ribs, hit him in the wrist, and then went to his leg. And the magic bullet theory is another thing that we'll discuss here in a minute.
Oh, man, that's a good one.
But if you watch the film, Jackie's eyes actually go to Governor Connolly first, and then it turns to JFK. And she puts her hands out to try to figure out what the hell's going on with him. and she was like 6 inches away from his face, and he gets shot in the head.
And that's why, to me, that's why I think the theory came out that, where she's the one that shot him. Because, yes, she was known for wearing very ornate and layered clothing. She was.
She was wearing a Chanel suit that day. A Chanel suit.
But there were still places where, okay, I'm gonna play the rabbit hole here.
I think it's too ridiculous to even talk about.
It is, but at the same time, it is a major theory that's out there.
No, it's not. I've never heard that theory once before, and I've literally read probably 10 JFK books and watched literally thousands of hours of YouTube. And the fact that she could have shot him, there would have been a massive recoil, because the fact that the way that his head exploded, it had to be a higher enough power rifle. If it was even like a 38 or 9mm, I'm not sure that it would have actually penetrated the skull. And so, I just feel like that's absolutely absurd and ridiculous. And not only that, but his head wouldn't have moved the way that it did, because the most common sense thing for her to do would have been to put her hand up, put him right here, and pull the trigger. It would have went straight out the top of his head if it came out anywhere. It wouldn't have went out the side. So I just feel like it's completely ridiculous, and I feel like we should concentrate on the things that we know. And to me, regardless of what we say here today, the Zapruder film is the one thing that can't be denied until somebody can explain why his head moved the way that it did, why the chunks of skull went back.
I agree.
I don't see any way. People can shout nerve things all they want, but if he was shot through the back of his head, that's like an inch away from what they call the light switch. And I've seen pictures of the back of his head. I don't see an entry one, number one. But number two, the light switch is here through the nasal cavity. And he was supposedly shot right there. And you're going to tell me that nerves in his spine made him jerk, and we're talking about less than an inch away from the light switch? It could have affected
that should have shattered all.
So obviously, it seemed like to me that it was more of a momentum move. The fact that when his brain actually explodes, it goes up and out, and the fact that it hits at an angle could make everything do weird things, because a lot of what you see is actually his face that slides down, and that's the fact that. When the bullet went through here, it could have severed all the skin and literally made it roll down.
Yeah.
So,
I know he was shot in the neck, but when I go through and I watch it, like I said, I know he was shot here. When I go through and watch the way he reacted initially, it looks like he was almost shot around this area.
Well, that's where the exit came out, because it actually went to right of his spine and his back, and it came out around this area, but they don't know precisely where it came out, because they did a tracheotomy on him, because he was having trouble breathing because the blood was filling up where he was hit at the bottom of his trachea. But it didn't hit his spine, and it shouldn't have affected the nerves, that I can see, or that any autopsy that I've seen had. So to me, that's the number one thing from the day, the Zapruder film. It's undeniable. They have it in HD color now that I sent you guys now. I don't think it can be explained away, and I would love to hear people that have actually shot lots of people in the head. I know that's morbid, but like snipers or whatever it may be, yes, I've shot lots of people in the head, and I've heard them talk before, and I've never heard them say, yeah, I shot him in the back of the head and he moved back. That's just not something that it seems like it happens a lot. Usually it just seems like people fall over, but
you're going the direction the bullet takes you.
Yeah. So, but anyways, so the Zapruder film's number one. Another issue of the day is the magic bullet theory. Now, the way that I've heard it explained, and maybe I'm wrong, but they needed to prove how many shots were fired that day. And it's so subjective. So many people said different amount of rounds, and the common number that they came up was 3. So there was a bullet that struck a curb and actually hit an onlooker that was underneath the overpass in the head. And so that's one bullet. We know that one hit JFK in the head. That's 2 bullets. So now we have the bullet that had to go through JFK and hit Governor Connolly. So they basically came up with this magic bullet theory. To me, the trajectory and the way that it kind of ricocheted through the body, that's not a problem for me. The problem that I get into is whenever they tell me that bullet was found mysteriously on Connolly's stretcher and it was completely unharmed. That's absolutely absurd and ridiculous. Yeah. It's a copper jacketed bullet. It's going to hit bone. It's going to be deflected. Obviously, it was deflected through Kennedy, which had to hit some form of bone in his ribs.
The seat.
It went through the seat. It went through Governor Connolly. It busted up his ribs at his wrist, and then it went into his leg. So that bullet, there's no way that it could possibly be unaltered. So to regurgitate and tell me that this bullet that they supposedly found on the stretcher is from Oswald's gun, That's the most fishy part to me, because everybody knows that when a bullet goes through things, it's going to kick off of it certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem I have with the magic bullet is that it fits way too into their narrative, and then to tell me that this is the bullet that was found on that gurney is absurd and ridiculous. I fired all kinds of bullets, and I was so crazy that I used to fire bullets into the ground and then dig them out of the ground because I thought it was cool. And every time it had some effect to it, especially if it hit something hard. And most of them that I was firing was just firing through soft ground, and I was able to actually find it. And, you know, there were still scuffs and scrapes and everything else on it. To be fired through 2 human bodies in a seat, that bullet's going to have to be screwed up.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's obviously another problem, and it fits way too in their narrative. And I think that that's the problem with a lot of things. You know, you look at all these conspiracies
And
that have kind of resulted over the years.
that kind of plays into a theory that I read recently that I'll get into after we get through all these, unless you want to get into it now just to get out of the way. That, you know, Oswald was actually, yes, a CIA operative, but he was more along the lines of the scapegoat. They told him to take the shot but purposely miss it as, you know, a scare tactic on Kennedy, not knowing, you know, and he didn't know the whole aspect of it.
Let's just talk about the shot right now. So, to me, it makes perfectly good sense. The car had to come around the corner, turn right, and then turn left. If I was sitting in the book depository and he made that turn, they said that there was a stop sign blocking him at one point in time. That's the easiest shot you're ever going to take. It's going to be a frontal shot. You can see, you know, everything from probably chest up. Easy shot. That's the part that never made sense to me. Do I think that Oswald was a part of it? Yes. Do I think that he fired shots? Yes. And I unequivocally believe that. But to me, if he was going to fire the shots, it would have been whenever he first turned on the road, ball game over with, 1-2 shots. Now, did he do that intentionally to know, hey, if I fire this shot right down here, everybody's going to know where it came from and I'm never going to get away? I don't know. But it also makes a lot more sense to let him get farther away so they can triangulate that and have multiple shooters in a designed area that's a pinch point that it comes from all different directions. Now, as far as the shots, it was an 81-yard shot. The rifle was not the best. It had been altered. There is eyewitness testimony that puts him going and regularly practicing with the rifle. But at the same time, it contradicts the theory that Ruth Payne didn't want any rifles in her house. The rifle was sitting in her garage, rolled up in a carpet. That's where he went and got it on that Thursday afternoon, going into Friday when he killed President Kennedy. He got it by disguising it as what he called curtain rods in a a brown plastic bag. So all of those factors go into it. Yes, they said that he was practicing, but at the same time, this young boy that was supposedly a gun buff described his gun perfectly. That's a little bit sketchy to me, but what's more sketchy is how did he get this gun from Ruth Payne's house to practice in the events leading up to the assassination? 81-yard shot, that's cake. He had a 4-power scope. It wasn't the most accurate. It was a beat-up service rifle. Is it capable of making a headshot at 81 yards? I don't know. The torso shot all day. You know, what's more concerning is the fact that his shot supposedly got better the further the car went away. It was moving 20, 30 miles an hour. It was getting further away. And now his third shot, he's making a headshot going away.
Yeah.
How would you cycle the rifle and get back on head and not just aim center mass? That part never made sense to me. So do I believe that he was involved in the activities of that day? Do I believe that he shot, you know, rounds? Yes, 100%. I'm not sure that they will ever be able to prove that he shot rounds ballistically without the magic bullet that they found in the gurney, because the other bullet hit the curb and exploded. And, you know, to my knowledge, they never found the one that went through JFK's head. But the curb was hit, ricocheted up, hit somebody, and the curb was fixed like the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all kinds of inconsistencies that go with this. But do I believe that the shot was makeable? Yes. Do I believe that on the third shot, after making 2 sketchy shots, he could have made headshot? No. But I do feel like that he definitely could have hit center mass on JFK, that first shot or whatever that went through him and Connolly. And obviously the other shot that hit the curb had to come from the back. So maybe he thought, I'm going to get 2 shots off. and the whole point of it was we're going to have a sharpshooter on the grassy knoll that is going to finish the job, and he's going to take the fall for it. Because, like I said, before the existence of the Zapruder film, there's no way to prove the way that his head moved and everything else. And then it made perfect sense because so many eyewitnesses placed a shooter at the grassy knoll. So many people said that they heard shots come from there. So many people said that they saw smoke come from there. And it only makes sense to have somebody up and to the right to make that shot at that weird angle, make his head spill like that, make his head move that way, ball game. Lee Harvey Oswald takes the blame for it. So I feel like the shot was makeable. I'm not sure that he make headshots as the vehicle was moving away on the third shot. That doesn't make sense just because of the action and everything else of the rifle. If you've ever operated a bolt action, they can be contrary, and that's current bolt actions. That's not, an early 1900s Italian Carcano rifle that's going to probably have some misses in the stroke and everything else. So, that kind of covers the shot itself as far as what I see. Now, the weird part gets into, like I said, the fact that there's so many people that said, hey, there was a shooter on the grassy knoll. I think it only makes sense with the actual evidence of the Zapruder film and with the eyewitness testimony. There was a train operator that said he saw smoke come from that area. If you watch the film, a bunch of people ran up that way. Does it necessarily make sense if people thought there's somebody shooting there that they would run towards it? I don't know. But, people get brave in numbers. They could have been running up there to find them. I don't know. That's answers that we probably will never get.
There could have, like you said, there's a train operator that heard it. There could have been,
saw it. He saw it.
I'm sorry. There could have been, undercover operatives up there as well. Military that they're not trained. They're trained to run towards the gunshots.
Maybe.
Just as extra security because tensions at the time were so high.
But there was
between Russia and
there
Cuba.
There were so many weird things about the route and everything else. They published the route. The route was so public. It was going through downtown Dallas. It had so many windows that made them a target.
Times too, though.
But at the same time,
even now today, they're publicized to a point.
Yeah.
And even when they're publicized, there's proper precautions. Like JFK got out and went into the crowd and everything else, and when Donald Trump was elected, he did the same thing, but it was at certain points that they knew.
Yeah. Well, same thing with Obama when him and Michelle got out and started dancing.
You see the guy with the fake arm, and he's holding a MP5, and it's got like a fake arm over here, and he's actually grabbing an MP5, so you know that there's somebody right there.
Yeah.
That's
I don't
going to
think
protect
any
him.
president been assassinated, for instance, like McKinley, and that was like 60 years before then. So I mean, it probably wasn't. I don't know.
But I think that
the tensions
a lot
were
of
so
talk,
high that they're
with the Cold War and everything else that's going on.
There's a lot of really weird and funky information right there where, like you said, it was so publicized from beginning to end and everything else.
So many windows, there's people that testified that they saw Lee Harvey Oswald standing up there but thought it was a Secret Service agent. So how did normal everyday citizens look up there and see that and there wasn't Secret Service or law enforcement
that saw it?
Hey, there's a sniper up there.
And not only that, people that are trained in marksmanship, they're not going to be standing right in the window to make that shot.
Yeah.
They're going to be back a little bit. They're going to do stuff to kind of cover their tracks, to cover where that shot came from.
So you have people that testify that they saw smoke or a shot coming from the grassy knoll. At the same time, Oswald is running down the stairs. He gets stopped by a police officer. They realize that he works there and they let him go. Well, Oswald goes home and grabs his .38. His description's already out on the wire. It could be by, onlookers, or it could be by, the people that want him to take the fall. And so a police officer stops him. He shoots the police officer. He runs to a theater. He bypasses the ticket gate, and the person at the ticket counter realizes, hey, there's sirens there, and this guy just ran in without paying. And so they notify the police. He gets caught there. And he's shouting, I'm a patsy, I'm a patsy. And 2 days later, he gets killed by Jack Ruby. Literally being led out, no protection.
Yeah.
That's the part, though, that I like.
You see the police officer, and he's like,
my biggest issue with Oswald being the man for it. All right, back then, communication technology wasn't really as advanced as what it should be. How did they get such an accurate description?
Well, because he shot a police officer.
No. That's
playing devil's advocate.
Didn't he shoot the police officer after the description was out.
But, let's be honest. In 60s Dallas, a white male with his description, that could have been anybody. And if he hadn't acted so squirrely, that police officer may never even stopped him or anything else.
True. But when you look at that artist rendering of him to him, it is so close, it's uncanny. That description, it's almost like they literally just had somebody take a picture and copy the picture. Almost like it was already set up.
I don't know.
That he was the fall guy. Do I think he took a shot? Yeah. But this goes along with the theory I had talked about slightly before. I think the way he thought the plan was going down was that they were just going to fire off shots purposefully, not hit him, just to scare him.
I don't think that at all. I think that bullet hit Kennedy. I think that if I was going to do an assassination, it wouldn't just be Lee Harvey Oswald. It would probably be several sites. There would probably be some point that we decided we were all going to open fire. And if we all opened fire at the same time in that plaza, it could literally sound like simultaneous gunshots. Like you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
So I think that there's probably a point in the sidewalk, a road sign, whatever, and all hell's going to break loose once he hits there. The most plausible explanation is the grassy knoll delivered the kill shot. So if that's the case, this train operator said he saw smoke. They followed those people. They arrested a group of people that they called hobos.
The three tramps, yeah.
Yeah, and so within that, there were CIA operatives that they found.
Yeah, two of the three were CIA, and I forget what the third one was.
Yeah, so obviously there's a little bit of merit to that. They ultimately let these people go. Joe Rogan even believes that there's a possibility that the reason that Kennedy's head moved so weird was because that he was shot from multiple angles at the same time. I'm not sure that the evidence shows that. Just because of the fact that there's not really a visible entrance wound in the back of the head. I mean, you would have to literally have the bullets on the same path to make that work. So I think that the most plausible explanation is that he was shot from somebody on the grassy knoll. There's a bunch of people that said that they heard a shot, that they saw smoke, etc. The E. Howard Hunt and the people with CIA connections were arrested immediately after. There's pictures of it. E. Howard Hunt said at the end that there was a group of people that were designed and brought there to kill Kennedy that were basically ex-CIA operatives that were pissed off because of the Bay of Pigs handling, the fact that Allen Dulles was fired, and then subsequently you have Allen Dulles being put on the Warren Commission to investigate his death. So obviously he's going to have the ability to cover
and all that kind of plays into the Umbrella Man too.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think we should go with what we know. And the fact is, we know that it appears that somebody shot Kennedy from the outside.
Absolutely. There's more than one shooter.
So, kind of tying into the grassy knoll theory, you have so many witness deaths that died in weird ways, including a police officer that was karate chopped in the neck getting out of the shower. Just so many ridiculous ways. You have suicides and murders.
Don't go ninja. No, we don't need ninja.
And I saw, and this can completely be false, but take this with a grain of salt, that the fact that so many witnesses of the Kennedy assassination that testified that they saw somebody at the grassy knoll died was a 100,000 trillion to 1 odds that these people would be killed in the months and years leading after the Kennedy assassination. So I think there's a lot of merit to this. I think that, like I said, the Zapruder film shows something. You have all the witness testimony. You have all the fact that these people started disappearing and dying and killing themselves, and their brake lines being cut, and them having all. I mean, so obviously it could be a vast, conspiracy. But the fact remains that if E. Howard Hunt and the group of men that were with him that day were in on it, and they had a list of people to take out, and they were trained assassins, it would be relatively easy for them to, cut people's brake lines, to hit them in the throat with a baseball bat and make somebody think that they got karate chopped and kill them. I mean, there's lots of things that would go into it, and it seemed like they did it all in different ways. So I feel like there's a lot of merit to the grassy knoll thing that I haven't seen disproven, other than the only thing that they can say is, oh, his head moved that way because of nerve. I mean, that's all you have.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, even Mythbusters did a test.
Everybody
to see how everything will go. And if I'm not mistaken, even they have, disproved the one shooter theory.
Yeah. Well, the CIA did test.
That's why
Jesse Ventura did test, which I'm not sure is reliable.
Yeah. I must love, Jesse Ventura. I don't know how reliable his test would be. But, somebody...
the governor.
Right.
I love that
But even in the CIA, I don't know if I would trust those for the simple fact...
It's so many years past that, though.
Yeah, but that's it, though. They're still gonna try to corrupt their own tracks from years past.
The guy that I saw that was a former CIA agent did not dismiss the grassy knoll theory. He said that it was a perfect vantage point for what appeared to happen on the Zapruder.
Multiple people have said that.
So, and then you have the History Channel that does tests. They hire literally professionals. They raise a tower up. They let them make the shots out of moving targets. Some of them can make it. Some of them can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did it on Discovery Channel, and they said the blood splatter and trace evidence was consistent with what happened. Like, it's possible that he did shoot from up there. Like,
yeah, because that's one of the tests that MythBusters did too. Was they took the ballistic gel dummy with a skeleton inside of it.
Yeah, that's what these guys.
And they shot it from behind, around roughly the same area that that Kennedy was shot at, and all of the splatter, the material splatter, not the blood splatter, but the material splatter went forward. And then when they did that along with the second shot that hit him, ultimately the kill shot, it did very similar to what happened. He went forward and then went forward where he was originally shot. Obviously this is a ballistic gel dummy, but the momentum kind of took it forward, and as it was coming back is when they hit it with the other one, and it took it, the way it was supposed to go.
But what you're saying is they shot it from behind, and then
initially, just to kind of prove
initially everything went forward, and then they did it from the grassy knoll theory, and it did it more of the way that it happened in real life. And that's not what you saw, David?
No, they tested it from the 6th floor tower, and just did it like the one report said it was done. It was consistent. And this guy, they were let's see, Tom Barrell, he's an independent investigator, and Steve Schlieb, he is a blood splatter trace evidence specialist for the LAPD.
Okay, did they do it from the front too to control it?
I'm not sure.
Because to me, when you have a head exploding,
but
obviously
if it works from the way he did it, then.
But who's to say it didn't work from the front?
Who's to say it didn't work from the
and who's to say it couldn't have been set up that way either, or it could have just been a freak accident.
But the Warren Commission, it's a bipartisan committee.
It's supposed to be.
Well, I mean, it is. It's not supposed to. I mean, it really was. There's Republicans. Former President Gerald Ford was in it. John Sherman Cooper, prominent Kentucky senator. They're both Republicans, and they were in it. I mean,
but all of the ways that we've heard that the government has lied to us, and we know for a proven fact, and the fact that the Warren Commission was kind of rushed because basically they wanted them to get it done in a certain deadline because the American people wanted to know.
Yeah.
And that was also before the existence of the Zapruder film. Because
the only part that's really bad at the Warren Commission is that they didn't cooperate with them and didn't tell them everything. I think that's the biggest flaw in the Warren Commission report.
And to me, I have never heard anybody say that, the blood spatter is one thing, but to me, the skull fragments is what's most important. So I would love to see a test that shows that the skull fragments went back and to the left side of that hood. Because that's where they
were. There's a moving vehicle too. I mean, there's a lot of variables involved.
Oh, for sure.
In the back seat.
For sure.
In there.
But once again, to me, my eyes still don't lie. Yeah. And if you can explain to me the way that his head would move like that in a tangible source, and we could hear maybe testimony from, actual people that have shot people before and say, hey, their head may move like that. But, if he was shot from the back, even being a moving vehicle, you would think that the way that he was sitting right here, he was shot from the back, you would think that his skull fragments being on this side would go straight behind him. But his skull fragments were on the far left side.
Yes, he's in a moving vehicle, but the momentum of that bullet is so much more than the moving car that to me, you would think that it would still go forward.
I think it would go forward and then go back. But to me, moving straight forward, going forward, it would take it straight back to the trunk lid of that car.
Yeah.
But it goes all the way over to the far left.
Whichever, because, if they hit him dead in the back, he's going down, which means it's also going to kind of be going down. So how much of that's actually hitting that seat first and going down? Because they are in a car.
Well, they said it was all the way up to the visors of that, which is understandable, regardless of which direction he was hit.
Absolutely. But the brain matter and the skull particles, which are so much heavier.
Well, there's 2 big chunks of skull, and they both went to the left rear side. And if they were shot here and they flew off the top of his head and momentum carried them, it would seem like that they went right there.
That's what I'm saying. The way the momentum of the bullet was so much more than the moving car, it would have went. To me, it would have either went forward and out of the car because he was sitting on the side, or forward and hit the seat.
Or even went on the side of the vehicle.
Yeah, and not even so much straight back, just because the momentum of the bullet. Because how fast at that day and age, how fast were those bullets really moving?
1,900 feet per second.
Okay, that's still
6.5 Kirkland. They said it moved like 1,900 feet per second.
Yeah, which
it was moving 1,700 feet per second whenever it exited his chest and hit Connolly.
Yeah, okay, so that's something to bat an eye at. They were doing what, 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour?
Between 20 and 30, nobody knows for sure.
Yeah.
Because he slowed down, and that's something else to remember.
David, you got your phone there. What's a quick calculation there?
I don't know.
You got your phone. What's 1,900 feet per second in miles an hour?
I have no clue.
You have a smartphone. Type it into Google. Seriously, how fast miles an hour is 1,900 feet per second?
The first time that he was shot, and it's nothing to forget either, the dude that was driving relatively stopped because he looked back to see what the hell was going on.
Which would have then made the momentum of the body go that much more forward.
I agree. And then that should make all the everything
all the brain matter, the skull particles, they would have been in the floor, out on the side of the vehicle, even in Conley's lap.
That kind of ties in with all of this. We have the autopsy issue. In the state of Texas, if there's a homicide, it's supposed to be investigated in Texas. An autopsy is supposed to be performed. You have members of the Secret Service and members of, what they call the Harvards, which are his close friends, that basically bully him out of there. I don't think that their intention was to necessarily cover anything up, because I feel like that they cared about JFK as a man, but I feel like that it's a lapse because now, instead of getting that autopsy there at the hospital and being undeniable against the official autopsy that we were given, they've created that friction because, the hospital doctors, when they look at it without actually investigating it or reporting one thing, exit wounds here, entry wounds there, and then they get to Bethesda, Maryland, and the initial guy that does the autopsy performs the initial written autopsy, burns the first copy, and then there's a second official. See,
and that's where I disagree with you. The people that bullied him out of there, I think that they were trying to.
No.
Not all.
You'll
of them
never
per se.
convince me of that.
Not all per se, because if our government was involved in this, they're going to do everything they can.
It still wouldn't be the Secret Service and his close friends. They just wanted to take their friend back there.
The close friends, I agree with, but it's the Secret Service I'm talking about because yes, they're tasked with protecting him, but who's to say that they weren't turned?
I don't think that there's any way, and here's why. Because it was so new and everything else, there's no way that they could possibly have a cover-up and come up with a plan, hey, we're going to bully him out of there without coming to autopsy. Because if you're having a government plan, to me, you would have that be written in. There wouldn't be the calamity that there was. They basically stole a hearse, they stole a casket, they took him out of there, and they threw him in a hot plane, essentially. And then they took him back to Maryland. The official doctor there made an autopsy report. He burned it and then made a second one. And that's common knowledge. He burned the first autopsy report. So, by that time, you have an official narrative of one shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald's in custody. And so, you make whatever it may be. And also, not only that, but when you have the photos and everything else covering up, you're talking about the President of the United States. You're going to want to clean everything up a little bit. And so, I think that they cleaned things up and they made it to where like all of the skin and everything on his face wasn't actually sagging off, to where he was more presentable. Now, whether they did this with an intent to cover up or not, I don't know. But there's literally pictures on the internet that you look at that I cannot see any type of wound in the back of his head.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know.
And so if you have a bullet,
I'm playing red pill, blue pill. red pill.
But if you have a bullet that hits him in the right front and it just it doesn't necessarily actually enter and go out the back of his head, it just more so goes underneath the skull and then comes out right there and then just blows out a certain portion of his brain. You know, that kind of fits in more with the narrative of what we're saying, and we're never going to know the truth for sure.
They can release all the documents they want. There's so
many drop balls in here to where they could have performed an autopsy in Texas, let them do their job, taken him home, performed an autopsy in Maryland, had the official report of the autopsy there, the autopsy in Texas. They could have shut it all down. But because they didn't do that, and they did so many sketchy things leading up to that, including the doctor burning his original report, and then you have the photos that seem to be somewhat tampered with, as opposed to what we see in the Zapruder film. It looks like a large portion of his skin's hanging down. James is falling asleep.
What else is there? I told you he was already drunk.
But, you know, there's just so many things that could have just completely put the fire out on all this that they didn't do, that they kind of let fall through the wayside. You know, you have Lee Harvey Oswald arrested. He gives his testimony, which I'm not sure that they've ever released, other than him saying that he was a patsy. And then the scope being off, etc. To me, that's not a big deal, because if I was going to shoot the President of the United States, I wouldn't give a crap about the rifle I'd throw it too. So you have all these things that happen after that. But, you know, to me, you know, like what David said, the CIA didn't cooperate. And you have J. Edgar Hoover, who kept extensive files on every person in power because he wanted leverage against them. He knew all about Martin Luther King's extramarital affairs. He had wiretaps and everything on him. He knew all about the Kennedys' extramarital affairs. He knew all this stuff. And he says on the record he thinks it's conspiracy. That's pretty compelling to me. And then you got Bobby Kennedy, his brother, who says it's a conspiracy. There was somebody else involved. The CIA doesn't cooperate, whether that's because they feel complicit to whatever happened and they had some involvement. I don't know.
The theory is that they had involvement with Oswald before, like he was like an agent for them.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about before.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I'm not too sure. That's actually, I think that's the biggest part of the conspiracy.
But to me,
what does the CIA have to do with it?
Well, to me, if you wanted somebody that wanted to prove themselves as you know, whatever, this hero, you know, Oswald was a perfect candidate, the perfect person to take the fall, because they could have told him whatever and he would have believed them. He would have went up there, he would have took his shots, knew somebody else was taking their shots.
Maybe he didn't know that he was working for the CIA. Like, my best conspiracy theory, just based on what I've read and stuff, is that he didn't know that, you know, he was working for the Morguson, and he had like convinced him to do this during a little meeting and stuff they had, and he didn't know he was working for the government. That's the conspiracy theory. That's the theory I have about governments.
But it didn't really seem like he'd take a big push. It seemed like he was right there on the edge already, and just take a little bit of talking.
When it comes to the CIA and Oswald, you know, that's one of the big theories. We talked about earlier. You just touched on it again with, you know, that he was actually tapped at a far, you know, years before to be a CIA operative, and they faked his, you know, denationalization and, you know, defecting to Russia. When you actually look into it, when he goes to renationalize as an American citizen, it's actually pretty smooth and quick and easy.
Yeah, and they closed their files on him when they came back too, and they didn't reopen it.
Yeah,
until...
there's really no looking. Okay, why did you denounce America and go to Russia and then come back? They just said, okay, cool. Welcome back.
They really didn't reopen his files, supposedly, until he went to Mexico City and applied for a visa to go to Cuba. And then you've got some dark days there where they don't really know what he had, and they proved on History Channel that there was FBI and CIA operatives in Mexico City around this Cuban.
Posing as him, and he wasn't actually there.
So, who do you all think killed him, and then why? Cause
too hard to tell.
Yeah. But you have to have your own theory.
My own theory, and you know, it's not. It is far fetched, but at the same time, it isn't. It's when I was looking up just some new things to bring up here, I kind of uncovered it. There's actually a CIA operative who was stationed at the same base that Oswald was when supposedly the CIA tapped Oswald. Well, supposedly this guy was tapped also. He was placed into the Dallas Police Department by the CIA weeks before, and supposedly his his orders from the CIA and everything else were released, and the order number on all of these orders, because obviously it's going for the same, the same mission, if you want to call it. So all the order numbers are the same. It's actually the same number of his discharge papers from the Marine Corps. I mean, identical. Everything's the same. And that the guy actually kept detailed journals. His son found them back in the 80s, and the FBI came in and took them all. But he actually said that, Oswald was an absolute patsy, knew nothing was actually going on. He did take a shot, but didn't hit a thing but the concrete. And that everything else was all CIA. This guy was actually tied into the three tramps. The three tramps that they picked up where they all took shots. Something like that. To me, it's a little more optimal, but to me, it's more plausible than obviously the magic bullet or just two shooters or Oswald knowingly going into this as a patsy or unknowingly going into this as a patsy. I think that the government had a lot bigger role in this than what people think.
But why would the government do it, though? That's
just it, though. A lot of it had to do with Bay of Pigs and Russia and everything else, to where.
Well, and he also gave speeches on secret societies and wanted to disband them, and
the IRS.
He basically had already fired the IRS. He had already fired the head of CIA in Dulles. He had talked about getting rid of the NSA, several things.
There's only two presidents in history that have talked about actually disbanding the IRS.
But go research that and listen to his speech on secret societies.
That I plan on doing.
And it's a big time thing.
Doing that. But there's only two presidents on record ever talking about disbanding the IRS and the whole tax system. Kennedy was one of them.
Which that doesn't make sense to me because he's a Democrat.
The other one was Lincoln.
Democrat.
The other one was Lincoln.
During a huge spending time during the Cold War. I don't know. I have to look up the speech because I've never heard of it before.
I haven't either.
It's amazing. It's one of the best speeches I've
ever heard. About the IRS?
No, about the secret societies.
Oh, I was talking about the IRS speech.
Oh, yeah. So, what's your final thoughts?
I don't know. I kind of take it like I was saying, like there's no evidence to go either way, really. I mean, you can go by what the Warren Commission says, the official report, but there's just so many holes in it.
So watching the Zapruder film, you think that he could have been shot from the back?
Yeah, I mean, if it's been proven before, like scientifically by people.
But what do your eyes tell you?
I mean, my eyes tell me. I mean, I've always been a skeptic of the Warren report and how it goes. I mean, I think that there definitely is something, but I don't know what it is. I mean, there's no, both ways. There's outrageous things on both sides. I know for when I first started reading about it, I really kind of I listened to other people's theories. Long thought LBJ and stuff had something to do with it, but I just can't see the motives.
They hated each other.
I can't see the motives or the reasons why. I mean,
he became president of the United States. So
yeah, but LBJ, I don't think he would have. He had power before. I mean, he was the
He's the most powerful person in the Senate before, and then when he went and became vice president, he essentially felt castrated, and he had mentioned that several times.
Yeah, but Lyndon B. Johnson, as president, I mean, he really was. He was probably one of the best 5 presidents of all time, if you exclude Vietnam escalation. That Kennedy.
Which there's proof behind the Gulf of Tonkin incident that was once again
a false flag.
Yeah, false flag. So.
And there's actual evidence.
So final answer: do you think?
Are you drinking the Kool-Aid?
Do you think Oswald?
No, I never drink the Kool-Aid.
Do you think Oswald acted alone? Final answer.
I think shooting wise, I mean, the evidence all points to him being alone. But I mean, I think if there was a conspiracy, he wouldn't have been alone in it. Especially when I was reading about the learning groups that they called it, I guess, like the study groups that they had.
That they passed out basically pamphlets on all this.
Yeah, which the Warren Schmidt stuff, it really doesn't make sense because earlier in his family were fascists and Nazi supporters and apparently I don't know, and he would just go the whole other side of the political spectrum and just be a communist. I don't know. It just seems really weird. Especially given his ties to prominent people in America.
Well, I didn't give my opinion before. I think that Oswald was absolutely guilty in being there, being a part of it, taking shots. To me, all of the evidence and everything that I've seen and what my eyes tell me from my experience, I don't think that there's any way that those shots came from behind. I think that somebody had to be on the grassy knoll. I think it's very possible that, to me, I think if you truly wanted Oswald to be a patsy, then there's no possible way that you would let him know anything more than, hey, we're going to go. I mean, I feel like that he was truly the fall guy. And Jack Ruby may have been completely accident. Jack Ruby was compulsive and everything else, and he may have just shot him thinking he was going to be a great American hero, and then next thing you know, he's convicted of murder and spends the rest of his, sad life of cancer and rotting behind bars. And so it could have been the complete plan of some shadow organization. I don't think it was the current CIA. I think it was probably pissed off people that had something to do with the Bay of Pigs. That had history with assassinations and carrying out these type of,
coups.
Well, not only a coup, but these type of assassinations, cover-ups, all this stuff. They had experience with it. I don't think that they were in the current CIA by any means, but I do think that they had some type of experience. The fact that E. Howard Hunt was arrested, the fact that there's pictures of him, being dressed as a hobo at that point in time, that he was actually there, the fact that he admitted on his deathbed that he was a part of some assassination plan to kill Kennedy, all of that can't be dismissed. The fact that, your eyes don't lie. His head moved a certain way, the skull fragments moved a certain way, and I don't care what anybody says, I have to actually see the evidence, because what you're saying is that you've seen a documentary that says it only supports from behind. He's saying that it only supports from the back. But at the same time,
Well, I didn't say only. I said they supported the
right.
Commission's findings.
Well, I would have to see it both ways, and I don't know that you could ever actually do it without putting a human being in there and shooting them.
Yeah.
And that's the bad part about it. But
I mean, there's ways you can go about that. There's people that are bad enough that they deserve it anyway. I mean, let's be honest.
For the greater good.
Seriously,
this
let's
child
be honest.
rapist.
You got pedophiles and rapists and murderers,
but
you can essentially chain them to the damn car and see how it goes.
Being serious about it, to me,
it's going to be the new Jigsaw murder.
Being serious to me, there's no possible way that I can watch that film, and I've tried. I've watched it a million times. I've watched it in HD. I let my stepmom watch it, who's never seen it the other night, and she's like, and I said, what do you think about the way his head moves and the way that the blood and everything comes out, the fact that the skull fragments went here? And she said, to me, it looks like you shot from the front. I mean, so that's a person that's never seen the film before, that watches it, that their eyes tell them this. I don't give a crap what anybody says, because,
at the end of the day, common sense has to rule out.
Yeah, and until they can actually physically prove that there's no way that there's somebody there, that E. Howard Hunt was there for this or that or whatever, I don't see any way to rule it out, and I don't think that we're ever going to know, to be honest.
So you think the motivation, though, like in your theory, that it was retribution for Bay of Pigs?
Well,
because he kind of left the CIA high and dry, like on their mission.
Exactly, and there's a lot of operatives that were on the ground training these guerrillas that were going to uprise, and so there's a lot of pissed off people and felt abandoned. And most likely, when Alan Dulles was shown the door, that these people were as well. And so they're probably no longer currently in the CIA, but also had experiences. I'm not sure that they could have been so pissed off that they couldn't have went and worked for the Cuban government or went and worked for the Russian government and be like, hey, I know these secrets, I can help you out. I mean,
that's a good theory to say, because, LBJ couldn't go after the CIA. Donald Trump couldn't release those things because of the CIA.
And it's all redacted.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to give you all these documents, and then you get them, and it's all redacted. And I understand that part of it with JFK and all the sensitive information.
That's like 50 years later.
But redactions are ridiculous, and it's part of what JFK talked about in that speech about secret societies and keeping things from the public. Because I'm watching the Zodiac Killer documentary right now, and the FBI has a file on them, and they released them. The current people are studying it, and there's still redactions in that. How in the hell is there redactions about the Zodiac Killer?
That one I can understand, though. Because
you can understand Zodiac.
Well, no. The reason I can say there's still redactions is because yes, it is an ongoing investigation, but they've never caught the guy.
And some of
right, but you're talking about
redactions are about innocent people that are still alive too.
Yeah,
because I've worked in offices and I got stuff redacted, and it's redacted because it's somebody's name that hasn't been convicted or whatever. It's an investigation.
I mean, I can understand parts.
But if
of
they
it.
haven't been, convicted and they're innocent, there shouldn't be any reason to redact their name from an ongoing current, especially when you're talking about Zodiac. I understand with JFK. JFK's so sprawling, and it's honestly scorched earth. It's nobody wins.
Yeah.
If Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, nobody's ever going to believe it. If the CIA was complicit, or there was this shadowy group of people, or if the Russians did it, or the Cubans did it, or the mobs did it, it doesn't matter. You're never going to be able to please everybody. And that's the fact of it. I mean, and that's what we have to accept, and that's what I've had to accept. We're never going to know the truth about JFK. We're never going to know the truth about Northwoods. We're never going to know the truth about 9/11. We have to accept that. But unlike all these other operations, you have the Zapruder film, and you cannot tell me that my eyes are lying to me. That guy slowed down. He gets his head blown off. His head moves a certain way. All of the skull fragments go a certain way. How in the world was he shot from behind?
It doesn't go that way.
So that's my final thoughts on it. I don't know what the hell happened, but you're not going to convince me that there wasn't somebody up there that shot him from the front.
I agree. I completely agree.
I don't care what History Channel showed. I don't care what Discovery Channel showed, because I honestly believe that if somebody is behind it that believes this is what happened, the Warren Commission's report was correct, they're going to show that information.
Mm-hmm. There's more than one shooter.
But that's my final thoughts on it, and I don't think that we'll ever know the truth, because I think that the people have died and gone away, and that everything's been redacted to a point that we're never going to know the truth.
Yeah.
I just don't really see, like, I would like to buy into the conspiracy, but I just don't really see the motive or how the outcome. Maybe they're expecting a certain outcome that didn't come, but I can't see how having JFK out of office and having LBJ in office.
Sometimes I don't think. I think you're looking too far into it. I think it's just revenge. I think they just hated the guy and they wanted him dead.
LBJ thought that it was retribution for the assassination of the South Vietnamese leader at
Diem?
Kennedy. Yeah, that Kennedy had. Whenever we overthrew South Korea, and I don't know. Maybe Oswald thought about that in his little study groups or something, and was pushed by a sinister.
I don't see any way that it was anything other than people that hated Kennedy and just wanted to get their revenge. And I think that with having the CIA operatives there, having Lee Harvey Oswald, who's pissed off that has CIA possible ties, I think it all makes sense. I think that they wanted him to take the fall. They wanted Kennedy dead. They didn't give a crap who followed him. They didn't give a crap about any, big scope politics. They just wanted the dude dead, and that's what they did. And that's all there is to it. And I think that they think that Lee Harvey Oswald thought he was going to be a hero within the communist, party and everything else. But the truth of the matter is that I've never heard anybody celebrating JFK's death.
Yeah, when the Russian... and the last file dump that our great president gave out with all the redacted stuff.
Well, that was, and he gets credit for it, but that was scheduled well before.
But I mean, he was.
It had been scheduled before, and it'd been denied to be released.
Yeah. He said he was going to release all of them. But.
If he was a true G, like he acts like he is,
he'd released it and redacted it.
All right, guys. Well, I lost the 2020 election, or I won 2020, and I'm out of office, and here's who killed JFK. And aliens do exist.
Well,
peace out.
And giants ruled the earth at one point.
The Russians thought that LBJ did it to start a war with Russia. That's the way they thought, which would be a pretty good idea. But I mean, we were already pretty much by proxy at war in Vietnam against Russia. So I mean,
and China.
Yeah.
And the world. But like I said, sometimes I don't think that there's any mass conspiracy other than they just want somebody dead.
I think that's the hardest part for people with conspiracy theories to buy into, especially when you think about, it's hard to believe that things just happen. There's not a grand scheme behind it or some. It's just hard for us to wrap our minds around it. Like the Newtown killings, the mass murders, and all those
that are never talked about anymore.
Well, and then you got Las Vegas, and it's just hard for us to realize that
there's crazy people.
Yeah, but also it's the fact that within every one of these situations, like let's talk about Las Vegas, there was a shop owner that released a video of people being drug away, and they come out and they release this video to the attorneys of the families that are suing these casinos, and it's released that the police never came forward to get these.
Yeah.
So how is a big lapse like that? How is the big lapses in the OJ files? I mean, how do we still not know truly what happened to Kennedy after all these years? Because you're talking about high-ranking officials like J. Edgar Hoover, who knew everything about everything, who made it a point to know everything about everything.
Had wiretaps probably in every room in Washington, D.C.
And he thinks it's conspiracy. So
I got another conspiracy of what you played on.
No more conspiracies. We're wrapping.
No, this is for another day. I'm just letting him know I have one.
Okay, we're wrapping this party up. But to me, the visual evidence is too much to overcome. And I don't see how anybody watches the Zapruder film and buys the Warren Commission's report. I love you, David, but I don't see how your eyes are telling you that you buy this.
Well, I mean, it's just
you drank.
It's what's on record. I mean, I can't go against what's on record by what some guy said or.
No, I'm not talking about the record.
This is not something about what some guy said.
I'm not a professional.
I'm just talking about you watching it and you understanding physics and the way that things move.
But I'm not an expert on physics. I think that's the main part.
Well,
but
you don't have to be. You just have to have a basic.
Have to be an expert to make a conclusion. Like,
you just have to have a basic common knowledge of it.
When you're going against the conclusion that the federal government released, you got.
But how many?
Because the government has never lied to us before.
But how many mistakes were in the Warren Commission? How many mistakes were in the Warren Commission, and the fact that also that this Zapruder film existed, and if they were so thorough in their investigation and it was not rushed and there were not things left out, how in the blue hell did they not figure out that there was a Zapruder film?
But a lot of people say about the Zapruder film, it doesn't show the leading up, it's just the assassin. It doesn't show the beginning, it just shows what's happening.
Well, that's because of the point of view where they were.
It shows it all.
Well,
he comes behind the sign, he gets shot the first time.
Yeah, but it's like when it's happening, I don't know. It's weird.
I mean,
it's real film.
Yeah, are you able to walk 20 to 30 miles an hour to follow something? I mean, that's the you see.
I'm saying
a lot
I
of
can't
people
make
are
a
saying
conclusion because I don't have a physics degree. I don't have a ballistics degree.
Well,
I'm not an expert on it.
I think the way that we should walk away from this, because I have never, and I'm being serious. I've done the Bill O'Reilly book. There's another one that's like. I have it on audiobook. It's like 30 or 40 hours. I have never seen a report that supports his head movement and the way that his skull fragmented and went on the back of the trunk that has supported being shot from behind. And that's the reason that they have to say it was nerve movement, because nobody can actually support the physics behind this and the ballistics behind this. And, if his head moved forward, if the brain matter and the big chunks of skull went forward, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But the fact that his head moved the way that it did, the fact that there was no movement forward and then back, I mean, all of these things play into it. I mean, I just don't see how it's possible that somebody gets shot in the head with a 1,900 feet per second bullet and their head moves into the impact and away from it. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
So, but like I said, I don't think that we'll ever know, and I think we can argue it until the aliens come and abduct us all, but I don't think we'll ever know the truth. So it is what it is, but this has been fun. I appreciate you coming. I appreciate David for your research as well.
Take the red pill.
I appreciate James for coming in late and then falling asleep.
Taking a snooze every game.
I've had a lot of fun doing this, and I think that we can do a little bit more research on these 3 points and maybe touch on them at the beginning of episode 26, and then throw in 3 new ones and just let this train ride build, because this has been the most fun that I've had.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's definitely the most
I enjoy the debate
subjective
style.
Yeah.
Especially we all 3, besides the Kennedy stuff, we all 3 had different views or opinions or.
Well, we have differing opinions on the Kennedy stuff, because once again, me and Mike are kind of on the page that somebody had to shoot from the front, and you're kind of more the Warren Commission side. So I mean, we all have differing opinions on that, and I bet if you look at 10 different reports, you're probably going to get 10 different arterial spray. And
no, of course, yeah, that's what I said. I mean, I'm not an expert on it.
Yeah, I don't.
I like to make my speculations kind of, based upon some kind of fact, and if I don't have all the facts, I can't make a.
The thing that stuck with me the most is that the dude with the CIA, first of all, said that everything lined up with what they said with the grassy knoll theory, and the fact that he's seen thousands of executions, and 9 out of 10 times when you shoot somebody at the head at close range, their body does exactly what you think. And to me, even watching those executions, which I haven't watched very many of them, but
he's like sitting upstairs watching.
I mean, all the ones I saw have been hanging decapitations, but
the one that I saw was I think it might have even been in Vietnam with the dude with the revolver shooting the people, and I mean, basically it's just like they moved away from the fact that the bullet came and they just fall, and that's kind of
the same. Like the new Rambo movie.
Hey, but that's pretty accurate.
That's a pretty awesome movie.
So, but anyways, we really appreciate everybody tuning in, and we're definitely going to do this again and maybe bring some more people in.
Quick question before we go off, because this is probably the last podcast we'll make before Star Wars comes out.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mike,
man.
I know you're pretty excited.
Oh, man.
I'm definitely seeing it.
Are y'all excited for it?
Yeah.
Is that even a question?
Yeah.
No, it's not. Because that's an obvious answer.
Yeah, I'll be seeing it. And actually, that's a good question. I actually meant to mention it. I'll definitely be watching it this week.
Absolutely.
So, I'm off all week, so.
Thursday?
Yeah, I mean.
He's gonna start camping out tomorrow for it.
No, you can go. I'll get tickets right now. There's plenty of them available.
So, but I'm definitely excited about it. I thought David was gonna say this is probably gonna be the last podcast we make before the CIA tears us apart.
Right, I thought he was going that route. No, we're going Star Wars. I dig it though.
The van that we spoke of past few episodes ago, it's back outside.
Yeah. Well, just so they know, if they're listening, you're gonna have trouble taking over this house. Trouble. Especially with Mike. We'll just let him walk the door while we go get the weapons.
I ain't the patsy.
So.
Better shot than James is. You want to give me a gun instead of before him? Let him open the door.
You don't know that. James has got military.
James is half asleep right now, dude.
He's reinvigorated. Look at him.
I'm good now.
But yeah, we appreciate everybody tuning in, and we're definitely going to do this again. And the last thing I want to ask before I get off the air is, are you going to come back and do our New Year's Eve show, and where we tell funny stories?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so David, are you in?
Because I already know a couple of mine that are coming up, so I have to be able to defend myself.
So we have 2 for sure, and we need to ask a couple more people, and that's something that I'm pretty excited about doing as well, doing a New Year's Eve show. We'll turn the table this way, get all the chairs behind it, and maybe
we should do like a podcast while we're talking. We'll play some beer pong.
Oh, man.
But
there's going to be a lot more alcohol involved in that one.
There's going to be a lot more slurring in that one. So.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, we appreciate it, guys. Hopefully you made it all the way through this. We're like 3 hours.
Don't take the Kool-Aid and always take the red pill.
So.
The battery is on its last life.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
4 hours.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
Ooh.